welcome to another Zelda podcast. I am your co-host today, David Geisler, and I'm here with my co-host, Kady Roberts. Kady, how are you?
I'm good. I'm kind of scared. I've done this in ages.
Well, it's been about two months, 2.5 months.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in forever.
2.5 months does equal forever. You absolutely.
Yes.
It did feel like a really long time. I don't mean to make a dumb joke there.
Yeah.
How was your break? Your season break from season 6 going into 7 here?
Oh, so much has happened. Well, I have a kitten. Well, I don't have a kitten now. My roommate.
Top of the list.
I was gonna say
things that have happened in my life.
Yes,
top of the list.
Top of the list.
I got a kitten.
My roommate has a kitten now, and she's very cute. She's like 2 or 3 months. Her name is Evie, like the Pokemon, and she looks just like my cat Atreus.
Yeah.
So they literally look like brother and sister, and he treats her like she is his daughter, and it's the cutest thing in the world.
So how old is your cat? Like
my
7 or 8 or something?
Yeah, like around 7.
Yeah.
So, which normally he doesn't get along well with cats. So we were like, maybe if it's a kitten, like we don't know. He instantly took to her.
Maybe because she's so young. Yeah,
she's young, and he likes playing, and so she's super playful. So he's been really having fun with that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's been really cute. And then I've been working at iHeart.
I saw this on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah, you got a job at iHeart.
Got a job at iHeart, and my job is continuing to grow. I just started helping out on the Angie Taylor morning show for Rock, which is crazy because it's like a dream of mine, and it's been super fun. But it starts at 6 a.m., and I live a long ways away, so I have to be up at like 4:30 to go to that.
Pretty much every day, 4:30?
No, because that's the issue. If I had a consistent schedule, I could have like a consistent sleep schedule.
Then you just adjust, yep.
I do promotion work as well. So like Mondays and Fridays I do that. And then one day I might work until midnight. This next Friday, I have a call time to be there at 2 a.m.
Okay.
So I've been like sleeping a few hours at night and then crashing during the day and then waking up. Like literally before I came here, because I worked today, I woke up and I was like, what time is it? What day is it? Is it tomorrow? That's how I've been lately. I've just been so delirious.
Yeah, it can be that way. Well, congratulations on the gig and all of that. That's very exciting. I hear you on the different time stuff. For me, sometimes I'm still in school. You've graduated. And sometimes I have to close the store that I work at as my side job. So I have to go in at 2 p.m. and I'm there till about midnight. And other times I have to open the store and I'm also waking up at 4 a.m. to get to the store. And then I get out at like 2 p.m. And that I open at least 1 to 3 times a week and I close 1 to 3 times a week. And it kind of alternates. And it is just the thrashiest sleep schedule in the world.
It's the worst. I'll say it. No, like not having a normal schedule, because this is the thing too, is I also am only part-time at the moment. So I don't even have like a full schedule. So like yesterday, like today I had to get up at 4:30, get there. Yesterday I slept in until 2 p.m.
Hey, let it out. All right. Yeah.
So I'm like, my world is in a never-ending circle right now.
You slept until 2 p.m.?
Yes.
Like when did you go to bed?
I think probably 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good 12 hours.
I was going to say 12 to 14 hours is like my sweet spot.
Of sleep?
Yes.
Cool.
That's like the amount of sleep I need to function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot of time.
It's a lot. It's my entire day sleeping. But it's okay.
I'm pretty good at 6 hours. I'm very happy about that. I kind of naturally wake up right around after 6 hours. If I go to bed at midnight, I pretty much wake up at 6, maybe 6:30, and I'm pretty good.
It's the adult in you. See, we talked about this earlier off camera. I'm not an adult yet. I don't have normal human responsibilities.
You just made me speechless.
It's true. All I do is play video games all day and sit in my house.
You're transitioning. What's also hysterical is you've graduated and I have not yet. And you are transitioning into an adult life. But it's good. It takes some time, I guess.
Yeah,
a couple of years.
I'm getting there. In the meantime, I'm playing like 5 different video games. So.
What's some of the coolest things happening for you over at iHeart?
Oh, I mean, the Angie show is awesome. Like, I've been getting to hang out with them and getting to be in the studio. And I got to be on air the first day I worked for them, which was really cool. Is it terrestrial?
Is it week daily episodes, or is it pre-recorded and edited and then put on terrestrial radio?
No, it's
live.
It's live,
wow.
Yeah. And so I'm a technical producer right now. So I do like the phone calls, the blog, I do their podcasting, all that kind of stuff. And then any other little side quests they send for me. So today I was looking at rock concerts coming so we could find tickets to give out.
Yep.
So that's definitely the coolest thing.
Oh, another thing that also sounds awesome. Sorry, I'm being a little ADD right now. but we just discovered that. Did you move, or how did we today?
Oh my God!
We live 15 minutes away from each other on foot now.
On foot, yes.
So how did we become neighbors?
I don't know, but it's honestly so nice because before it was kind of a trek to get over to each other.
Well, you were doing Blue Line all the way to downtown and then back up and out, or sometimes you were taking the bus, right?
Yeah,
that's why we would meet up on campus once in a while.
Yeah, but yeah, now I because I was gonna take a nap after my work today, with my 3-hour nap, and so I was like, okay, I need to know how long I could sleep for, and I was like, 15-minute walk. That's nothing. So
are you just like down Damon? We got to get into our episode here, but I'm just catching up with you.
Well, yeah, no, I literally if you go down this street, and then when you hit Winchester, turn down Chicago, that's all it takes. What? It's literally 1 street, 2 street. I'm at
Are you
my
in
place.
Wicker Park? Are you over there in West Loop?
Yeah, I'm in Ukrainian Village.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, by the Marianos over there?
Oh, I'm right next to that.
That's literally the grocery store I walk to. Yeah, you're right. It's like a 15-minute walk.
No, and you want to know what's even crazier? Talking about the Angie Taylor show, she also lives right down the road from me.
Really?
Everyone just lives in Ukrainian Village, apparently.
Wow. If you ever want to stop at the Stoop, I think it's called. It's a little resale shop where they do resale clothing. Maybe it's changed names now. It was my cousin Alex Sheehan, who's been on this show a few times, his wife's store, but they've now moved to Georgia, I think, actually. Oh. So they gave it away, but the namesake might still be there. But that building is owned by Ben Johnson and Emily Johnson, who have also been on this show before. And so, I don't know, just a fun thing.
No,
they live above.
Check it out.
They bought the building 10 years ago, and, it's not like they were billionaires or anything. So they've just been working on this thing for the past 10 years, and it's gorgeous. It's it's fully remodeled now, and they actually had an opening. But that's I can't believe you just live over there in that area. All right. We got to get into this episode.
Wait, I know we got to get into it, but we didn't catch up with you at all. I've just been rambling about myself.
Oh gosh.
Wait. So you're still in school? You're still returning?
In school, yeah. And if this is your first episode, listeners, thank you so much. We are catching up a little bit. This is our first episode of season 7. We will be talking about Ocarina of Time 3D today. Yes. We're going to be doing essentially a review episode. We haven't quote unquote reviewed Ocarina of Time since the Ocarina of Time review episode back in season 2, which was 5 years ago. Mm. And Kady, this is your experience. You experienced it for the first time.
Yes.
And so we'll be discussing that in just a little bit here. And I can't wait to get into it. I've got my notes put together. We'll kind of walk through the game and talk about it. This is the a new hope of the Zelda series. This is the Star Wars episode 4 of the Zelda series. This is the one that everybody kind of baselines off of. And so I'm so glad you got to experience it, and we'll talk about it.
Oh, don't talk me up too much, man. I'm getting a little nervous now.
You'll be like, what part?
I mean, who?
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm a senior.
Congratulations.
For the first time in my life, I am a senior in college.
That's amazing.
Isn't that weird?
No, that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. I left school when I was a junior last time, 20 years ago. And so it was kind of cool to start this semester. I'm in my WCRX practicum class, so it's the 400 level class. I'm not sure if you took that one or not. I think you did. It's where you run the radio station.
Oh yeah, I did that for the whole year because you could do it the second semester too if you want. What time are you on air?
So
do you do a podcast?
I'm doing the podcast track. It's myself and another student are doing. So they've kind of made it a dual lane experience now. Mm-hmm. So half the class, half the lecture with the class is about running the board and putting your clock together and doing all that kind of stuff, which is the stuff you were kind of doing last year, I think. Then Matt Cunningham, our professor, he might have been yours as well.
Yeah.
He then also kind of splits the lecture into if you're doing a podcast thing. Fortunately, I'm pretty comfortable with making podcasts, but what I do have to do is I have to make sure that every episode is exactly 29 minutes long. I have to do every 10 minutes. I have to do a tag drop where I have to be if you're just joining us, this is WCRX. I'm David Geisler and talking to blah, 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 which you definitely don't have to do on normal podcasts. Oh,
absolutely.
And so what I do is I've created a show called An Artificial Podcast.
Yes.
And I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's pretty weird. My co-host is AI. That's what what the show is. And I'm not really for AI or against it in the show. I'm not really trying to preach in either direction. I think there are pros and cons in both directions. You know what I mean? But I'm just kind of letting the experience be kind of almost an experiment, actually kind of an art project, if I'm being honest. It's almost like an audio art piece because I'm having conversations with this software. I've chosen a female presenting voice. So it kind of is there's a little bit of, it's easy to accidentally imagine this voice being an actual character. Yeah. And she is kind of becoming a character. We're 5 episodes in now. There's going to be 15 episodes of this show. And to answer your original question, my show airs Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. on 88.1.
Okay. I'll have to tune in.
And if you miss it, I put it all out in the episodes, or I put it out as podcast too. It's just a 6-5.
Cool.
It's actually a joint. I got permission. It's a joint production between 6-5 and WCRX. So both logos are on the graphic. It's very cool.
You're doing amazing things.
Well, I'm excited to get to the end of all of this so that I can also just kind of get a proper podcasting job and continue to bring 6-5 up. But that's been really cool. So an artificial podcast, 100%, there's going to be an ad for it in the middle of this episode. People can go check it out if they want. And that's that. Yeah, I did a couple camping trips basically we took a break over the summer is how it worked out this time, which was a little different. Usually AZP takes a break over the winter. Mm-hmm. Usually we kind of get up to the holidays and then kind of take off January and February, but it's just the way the season worked out this year.
Yeah.
So here we are. It's as we record this in a couple weeks, it's going to be Halloween. It's October.
Yes.
Oh, do you have any Halloween costumes planned or anything? You just clapped. That's why I'm asking.
I keep going back and forth because my roommate is going as Shadow the Hedgehog, and so a part of me wants to do Tails, but the other part of me wants to be Fiona from Adventure Time. So
Decisions.
I know. I think I'm going to do Fiona just because I will wear all the stuff for her again. I don't wear yellow too often.
That's fair.
But I do like Tails. I would be Tails if I was in the Sonic universe.
Yeah. You give Tails.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my roommate were talking about that. We're like, you give Shadow, you give Amy, your boyfriend or your partner gives Espeon. Like, because she's been replaying through the Xbox Sonic. What is Sonic Adventures? Yeah. She's been playing through that. So
my other class that I'm taking this semester very quickly is social media content. And so I'm going to school part-time. I can only go to 2 classes a semester. I have 3 classes left. So hopefully I really will be done in about certainly while we're still making this show. Hopefully I'll graduate and we'll both be graduates. But that'll probably be like a season 8 thing for AZP. But anyway, that's been a really cool class because it's actually pretty hardcore. There's like simulations you run each week and you practice doing TikToks and Instagrams and Reels and YouTube posts and Twitter really posts or X posts or whatever and all of it. And then you run it through a simulation and then it kind of lets you know how you performed with your verbiage and your photo placement and your hashtags. It's cool. And it's starting to inform how I literally do social media for 6-5. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually a class that I'm really getting a lot out of too. And so both my classes are very satisfying this semester, I'll have to say.
Absolutely. Now, they have asked me to do social media stuff a couple times for iHeart, and I don't know when they're going to learn. They should not ask me. I literally got assigned to do an Instagram story a couple weeks ago. I had to call up my friend, and I'm like, what's an Instagram story?
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Kady, you're like 23.
20.
You're 20?
Yeah. I know nothing about social media, like, to be completely honest with you.
You're supposed to be the one that does.
I know it's supposed to be like my generation. I got nothing.
I will admit I've gotten, I've been doing, I was one of the first 10,000 accounts on original Twitter, literally way back in the day.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It was nuts. It was back when you would do it over your phone and you had to do it with T9. There wasn't even a Twitter website back then. It was all texts that would send out to people, which is where the 149 character limit came from originally.
Okay.
But so I was always very pro or up to like social media and kind of interested in the new things that were coming out. And it just kind of happens as you get older. I'm now 43. I've kind of capped at Threads, X, and Instagram. And I'm not quite doing YouTube shorts or Instagram stories or TikTok, videos. Yeah. And so I do have to if I want to keep communicating and getting our shows communicating to the people who are listening, those are the things I need to like now skill up on.
I was going to say, I feel like TikTok and YouTube is probably where I would know the most just because that's where I spend the most time on.
Yeah.
I really didn't spend time on Instagram or anything until this last year or two.
Well, and we should get into our episode, but I want to say one more thing. Have you noticed something a little bit different about the space we're sitting in today? It's okay if you don't, but you might.
Got some lights.
We have studio lights now.
Yeah.
You've got some accent light on you. We have key lights where we're doing a proper 3-point lighting setup in the studio now. And I've got more paraphernalia and fun Zelda things on the wall because the intention is we're going to start taking some of these episodes and we can video clip them for shorts and Instagram reels and stuff like that. So maybe you can help me with that.
Coming to you guys soon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, I'm going to help with that. Don't worry.
All right, let's I think we've got
actually start.
We went down to, I know, it was just fun to catch up. We're 15 minutes into this. Thank you for your patience, or maybe it was, I think for our regular listeners, maybe some of that was interesting. If you're brand new, thank you for learning a little bit about us, I guess. And Kady, I'm so excited for this season. We've got some great episodes planned. We're going to be doing, I think the very next episode is going to be an Echoes of Wisdom.
I'm so
First
excited.
Impressions. I have it here in the studio. I'm going to shake it real quick. You can see it on the camera if you're a Patreon. This is the Lego Deku Zelda kit. The Zelda Deku Lego kit, I guess is another way of saying it. I haven't even opened the box yet, but that's going to be, I think, our 4th episode of the season. Myself and Hoke Bricks are going to get together, and they're going to build the Breath of the Wild version of it, and I'm going to build the Ocarina of Time version of it. And then we're going to do a full episode talking about what it was like building these experiences. We also have our final, or maybe our penultimate crossover with Studio Demands It, where myself and TC watch the Legend of Zelda cartoon.
Oh, you're finally finishing it?
Okay, how about this? How about super behind the curtain? Last night, TC was here in this room, and on that TV, we watched the final 2 episodes. But furthermore, his co-host, Jim, who I'd never even met in person, I've been producing their show for 3-4 years, also came to Chicago. So the 3 of us we watched the cartoons and took our notes and everything just last night. And then they're going to come back into Chicago. They're going up to Wisconsin real quick today. They're going to come back to Chicago tomorrow, and sitting right here, we're going to record the 4th episode of this season, which will be Excuse Me, Princess Part 4.
That's amazing.
And it'll be Jim's. It was Jim's introduction to the cartoon. He was like, what?
I was going to say, I have only seen clips of it. I'll have to watch it at some point.
It's been an interesting journey. And actually, if you're interested in going back into our catalog, listeners, any of the Excuse Me's, we only do 1 a season. And so there is a little bit of an arc, an arc to TC and I experiencing the show. In the beginning, we're like, oh, it's terrible. And then we're kind of like, it's growing on us a little now. You know, we're still trying to stay present. But anyway, I digress. Let's let's cough it out and do our listener feedback real quick.
Yeah, if I'm coughing at all, I've been getting over a cough for like the past month, so I apologize.
Gross.
But yeah, very gross.
I'm joking.
It is gross. Okay. Anyway. So, first listener feedback. I think this is on Apple Podcasts.
Oh my gosh. Nah, I don't know if that's a weird crop. That might be Instagram, but let's just read it.
All right, we're just going to read it. This is Wim_the_Greenkeeper. And they said, hello to everyone in the crew. I have been listening from time to time to the podcast. The last few weeks, I've been going through all the seasons of the show. David really inspired me to try the original Zelda from the NES again. After being a Zelda fan for 30 years, I'm happy to say I finally beat it and loved every bit of it.
Too cool.
Thanks for the great podcast and the inspiration to keep enjoying every Zelda in its own way.
I've said it before, but I'll say it again. My favorite thing about sometimes what we get with this listener feedback is this kind of, I guess what I've realized over the years of doing this show is that, we can have Zelda fans listen, and then we might talk about Breath of the Wild or one of their favorite games. But my favorite thing is to hear when people say like, well, it inspired me to dig in and play some of the older ones, or try, like, I've never did Twilight Princess and I gave it a go. Or we even had one listener feedback that literally said, like, I went to a used video game store and like rebought a Wii or a Wii U to play these games. So cool.
No, that's how I've been experiencing it being on the show. Because,
I mean, that's true.
Yeah, it's been a whole thing of like, I probably wouldn't have touched some of these older Zelda games, but being on it, I'm like, you know what? I need to talk about it. I'm going to give it a shot. And some of them, it might take me a second, but it's like I'll learn to appreciate it in its own way, kind of like how they were saying through the show and kind of appreciating it. And I just got a Wii U not that long ago with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker.
Oh, my goodness.
And the original Skyward Sword, although I did play HD already.
Yeah.
So I'm playing through Wind Waker and Majora's Mask right now, and I'm having a blast.
Wind Waker HD, technically, on the Wii U.
On the Wii U.
And Majora's Mask 3D on your 3DS?
Yes.
Fascinating. Interesting. Oh, I can't wait to talk about all that.
Yeah.
We spoke about this a little bit last season, but if there's anyone that's just joining us this season, one of my favorite things about what's happening about co-hosting the show with you, Kady, is that I think we both have equal love for Zelda, and we're experiencing it at both ends of the spectrum of what our fans experience. You know what I mean? Like, you basically were introduced to it with Breath of the Wild, I think, right?
I was, yeah. That was my first ever Zelda game.
It was Breath, and then you're going back into the history.
Yeah, I'm going back in time.
Yeah.
And stop the first Thanksgiving. Do you know that's wrong?
No!
There's a movie about birds going back in time to stop the first Thanksgiving, and that's what he says. He says, you heard me. We're going back in time to stop the first Thanksgiving.
That does
You've
sound
never
familiar
seen
now. It's animated? Is it stop
animated.
motion animation or just
no, it's just a really weird and kind of racially insensitive movie. I'm going to be so real.
Oof.
It's really funny though.
All right. But I'm so pleased because you're experiencing the Zelda series, almost in reverse order, or as someone who's almost being an archaeologist and going back into these games. And I have experienced it in order, organically through time. And so what's also kind of fun is my first time I played Ocarina of Time, of which we'll be talking about today, really was like 25 years ago. You know what I mean? And then for you, it was a few months ago. Of course, we did the 3D version, but nevertheless. All right, here we go. Here is a review, a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. And this was over our break. This was June 3rd. Sonic Link 155 says, "Best Zelda pod. Hello, I am 15 years old, and I've been listening to this podcast for a while now. I love everybody on, and it's a great place to listen to everything Zelda. I was wondering if you've ever heard of a theory on the internet about who Ocarina of Time Link married. Maybe we say this for our episode. The theory goes that Link married Malon, and they passed down Epona's song, which is why Link... Oh, I guess here's the theory. Yeah. This is why Link from Twilight Princess, who is the descendant of the Ocarina of Time Link, which is... Most people agree that that's canonically accurate, already knows this song. Oh, the ghost Link and Twilight Princess. It's super interesting and it makes a lot of sense. I love this podcast so much. And ever since I started listening to it a couple years ago, I've loved it. Sorry, this is long. No worries at all, Sonic Link 155. Love that it's long. Love that you are sharing this. It's definitely going to give us something to talk about. I think we return to this point.
Yes, I love the name as well. I will say, though, really quickly, playing through Wind Waker, they start with talking about Ocarina of Time. And so I was also so caught off guard when they started talking about it. I'm like, where does this fit into the lore of everything?
Wind Waker was one of the first Zelda games that, some might argue that A Link to the Past kind of references that it is a prequel to the first two Nintendo games. But other than that, Wind Waker was the first one that had direct, graphical links and storyline to saying this happened. And also it was one of the first Zelda games that blatantly acknowledged that Link is a different Link. Yeah. It's thousands of years later is when Wind Waker happens. Anyway, very cool. Yeah, the Sonic Link, I feel like that's that reminds me of the Sonic Adventures game on on Wii U that had the Link level where Sonic literally wears Link's costume.
I didn't know about that. That's awesome.
Oh, we talked about it in one of it was before you joined the show. We did a weird cameo appearances of Link episode. And that was that. And then, of course, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green heart emojis. I love it so much. Thank you so much for that. Here you go. I'm going to hand the listener feedback to you, Kady.
All right. We got one last listener feedback. This one's also from Apple Podcast. And it says, "Love this podcast. 2 green hearts and 5 stars. We love to see it." And this is from CC Shark 2001 and then parentheses Gardener Boy 1. So it says, "This is my favorite podcast of all time. I'm 12 and going into 7th grade, and I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I listen all the time when I do laundry, homework, or on road trips. I'm obsessed with Zelda and Nintendo. My first Zelda game was Breath of the Wild, same here, and I loved it. Now I am on a quest to play every Zelda game. I got Tears of the Kingdom on launch day. Now I want to get a 3DS to play Ocarina of Time 3D. Whoa! But overall, I love the podcast. Keep up the good work. And I can't even count how many green hearts this is. I'm going to say 25 green hearts.
Oh my gosh, it's 2 lines.
Yeah.
You picked this listener feedback today. Did you see that it was referencing Ocarina?
Yes, this one and the last one. I wanted to try and kind of keep it topical. You know?
I love it. Yeah, this is going to be fun because, like I said, we're being very technical right now. We've technically already reviewed Ocarina of Time, but you and I will be discussing the Ocarina of Time 3D port, not even remake, but port. Yeah, maybe remake, but I think port is the correct word. And but essentially, we're really discussing Ocarina of Time as far as the story goes. And it was your first time experiencing the story, the gameplay, the mechanics, and was the case with many people 20 years ago or gosh, no, I think Ocarina of Time 3D was 10 years ago now. I forgot its release date. I might look it up. But the 3DS, people were introduced to it. I think it's 20 years ago. It can't be true.
Was it 2014 or am I making that up? Am I pulling that out of a hat?
I'm pulling it out of all the hats. Are you looking up right now?
Yeah, I am.
So maybe it was just 10 years ago. It couldn't have been 20 because Ocarina of Time is 25 or 30.
Well, it couldn't be 20 because I'm 20 years old and I had a 3DS.
There you go. So I'm sure
2011.
Oh, 2011.
So I was close.
Okay, yeah. So it's about 12, 13 years ago. And a lot of people experienced Ocarina of Time for the first time on that system. And so in some ways, that'll be your experience here. For me, it was, I think we're going to jump in. For me, it was just kind of some broad thoughts up on the top here. This was the first, I had gotten Ocarina of Time, when I got my 3DS during the making of this series, I think it was like season 3 of AZP, I finally got a 3DS because I knew eventually I'd want to play Triforce Heroes and other things. I knew a link between worlds. I knew I wanted to play and stuff like that. And so I finally found a 3DS and I picked it up and I couldn't help myself. But of course I think Majora's Mask 3D was already out as well.
Yeah.
But I got Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D and all of that. And so I played it up through to the Forest Temple a couple years ago, probably around season 3 of this show. I might have even mentioned it once or twice, but this is the first time that I really, truly, critically played it, like with intent, knowing we'd talk about it, kind of going through the whole thing. And I have some major takeaways. This won't be a full episode of like how the 3DS version is different than the main one, but there are some things here and there that I think is interesting. But I do feel that a little bit like the Link's Awakening Switch remake, even though this one's a port, if you have played Ocarina of Time 3D, you have 100% experienced Ocarina of Time. Yeah,
which it was interesting because when I was about to start playing, me and you had this whole conversation about what we were going to play it on because it came out on, the N64, was it?
Well, that was the original, yep.
Yeah, that was the original. And then the 3DS. And then also they have the port over to the Switch. And
well, it's in the expansion pack,
yeah. And so we settled on the 3DS mainly because I was like, I really want to play it on the 3DS.
I was kind of pushing for you to play with the original polygons, but you were really pushing for the 3DS. And then I realized, well, wait, that's interesting. That's part of the story. Is that if that's how you want to experience it, then you have the right, and that's what should be part of the conversation.
Yeah, which I am glad I did because now that I'm starting to play Majora's Mask, which I had already owned on the 3DS, it's been really easy to hop over and play that because it's the same game essentially, with like the controls.
Oh, right.
And when I started playing Ocarina, as with many Zelda games I start and play, I have a hard time getting into it initially.
Yeah.
Before I find the love of it. And what you did, we were talking about it on one of the episodes.
Ooh.
You brought up the comparison with Peter Pan in Ocarina. And after that talk, I went back, and this is so nerdy of me, but I had just went and seen the Peter Pan musical with my mom.
Oh, that's right.
So
yeah.
I started listening to the soundtrack a little bit while I was playing the game, and I found a whole new love for that game.
Fascinating.
And that is when I was like, yeah, this game is pretty cool. And so now jumping into Majora's Mask, I'm not having that initial trying to get into it. I just jumped straight in and I'm like, I'm loving this.
And when you say trying to get in, many a Zelda game, especially the older ones, have that kind of, which was part of how video games worked back then, have that kind of training area ramp up thing.
Yeah.
Go learn to get your shield, go learn to get your sword, go learn how to throw a rock, that kind of stuff. And that definitely happens in Ocarina of Time. Is that what you're speaking about? Is it getting into the game that way, or emotionally subscribing?
Both. So it is that little training sequence, because I do feel like the earlier Zelda games, it does take a little bit longer to get into the game.
And you have not played Twilight Princess yet, right?
I have not yet.
Okay, that one's
and that's okay.
A long one.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's okay. But especially emotionally subscribing to the game, because with the older games, me jumping into Breath of the Wild initially and then going to some of the older games after that, I'm like, where's the voice acting? Where's the cutscenes? What do you mean I have to read?
My gosh.
And I'm not a patient person. So especially when I first tried playing Ocarina, because this was my second playthrough technically. The first time I played through for a couple hours and I didn't touch it for a year.
So when you say play through, is it really played to? What point did you play to?
Probably not even past the Deku Tree.
Got it.
But it's because my issue is I'm like, I just want to get through this. I just want to go. And so I start spamming the A button and I'm missing all the dialogue. And then I'm like, this has no story.
Oh yeah, you've spoken to this point.
So it's a constant issue I have. So going back to Ocarina, I actually sat and I started reading the story and I was like, this is really good. And same when we talk about Echoes of Wisdom, it's very similar in that. So I was like, I need to sit and read and actually pay attention and focus my brain, because when I play video games, I don't want to focus my brain. I don't want to have to actually think about things, and then I miss everything. So I've been trying to focus more, which is why Majora's I've been having a great time with. Wind Waker I've been having a great time with. Echoes. I'm starting to get to that point where I just start a Zelda game and I'm already invested.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. For some context, when the original Ocarina of Time came out, voice acting didn't really exist yet. I mean, there's a little bit on the PlayStation, but let's just say as far as the Zelda series goes, none of that was even a thing that was even really a vernacular in video games yet. But what was we were going from a couple sentences, maybe like if you're lucky, 8 words in the Nintendo games, no words in the first one.
Yeah.
And then there were finally townsfolk that would kind of talk. The first game technically has a scroll that you can read, and that's about it. Kind of sets it up. Then you can talk to people in Link's The Adventure of Link, but there's just enough room for truly like maybe 5 words. It's like, Northgate is the answer type stuff. Oh, the old man and stuff talks in the first game. That's right. I just thought about that. Oh my gosh.
He doesn't talk too much though.
No, that's about what you get. You get like a single sentence. And Zelda 2 was that way as well. There was a little more dialogue in the Super Nintendo game, but by the time we hit Ocarina of Time, which really was only the 4th Zelda game ever.
Was it really?
Absolutely. It was, no. It was the 5th because Link's Awakening is in there.
But still, I didn't realize how early on it came.
And when it came out, it was the ultimate Zelda game. It was the 5th one in the series, I'm realizing. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Another fun fact, Super Mario 64 or Mario Kart 64 was only the 2nd Mario Kart game ever. And it's so easy to forget that.
That's crazy.
It was Mario Kart for Super Nintendo and then Mario Kart 64. So the whole 64 generation...
That's renowned.
Yeah, well, all the 64 games were kind of this new level of gaming at the time, and because we were in 3D, because the fact that the camera in Ocarina of Time could swoop in and out.
Yeah,
I remember reading articles on websites about how the developers of the Ocarina of Time, they were specifically trying to make quote unquote cinematic angles because it's the first time they were really able to do that kind of stuff, and so. That's all we needed. That like felt like a cutscene. One camera just kind of swooping in for a thing, or that scene early on in the game where Link is on the bridge with Saria and she's saying goodbye to him.
Yeah,
that was like an epic cutscene by our standards emotionally at that point. So to go back and think like, all this, I just want to skip the words. I totally hear you and get it. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is just getting 5 or 6 sentences and cool camera angles felt enormous back then.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying. I think like through playing these games, I'm starting to gain a greater appreciation of just gaming as a whole and like the history of it.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, because it is one of those things where like I was consistently being like, why am I not getting into these games? Why am I having such a hard time? And I had to sit down for a second and be like, it's because I'm not actually playing the game. Like, I'm not actually playing the game. I'm just, like, trying to go through and do whatever. And that's not how it goes. And so it's, like, that moment where I just have to sit down and, like, actually be present in the moment and, like, play it. And then I have the best experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's really been helping me a lot with, like, I've gone back and started playing, like, some newer games that I've done that with, like Hades on the PC.
Oh, really?
That I tried playing through and I was like, I don't like this. Like, I keep fighting and whatever. It's a fighting game. But now I'm going back and playing it. I'm like, the story here is really good. I just kept skipping through all the dialogue.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Interesting. And I'm dyslexic. I'm not one that loves to read, but I do try to, like, in a video game. Sometimes if it's like 5 or 6 of these things, it's like, all right, let's keep moving, but other than that, I do appreciate it. Well, that's fascinating. So that was some of my first, I guess we're kind of reflecting. We could start talking about the opening area, but I really appreciate you sharing how it was for you emotionally to play this time around. So the one thing I'd like to say from my point of view, playing the 3D port, and I say port because it's not a remake, like the Link's Awakening remake for Switch, they made it line up so that all the graphics were in the same spots, based on the Game Boy version. But Ocarina of Time 3D, I understand, is running on top of original code.
Oh, okay.
So like the Ocarina of Time code was given over to Grezzo to work with, and then they did graphic upgrades and some of the UI upgrades and stuff like that. And that's my understanding. One of the first things I noticed when I first started playing Ocarina of Time 3D. Oh, hey, I got to ask you.
Yeah.
Did you play it in 3D?
No.
You kept that slider down?
I always keep the slider down when I play 3D games. It gives me such a headache.
As much as possible, I try to keep the slider up on all my 3DS games because I'm kind of like, this is a unique experience. This is the only place where you can really get a 3D game like this, and had to have Navi fly around Link and have her little sparkles kind of come out of the screen at you.
It's cool. Sure.
Though I noticed that with this version compared to some of the other 3DS games I've played in 3D, it gets a little blurry sometimes. There's you get shadow links on the side and you're looking at 3 links instead of 1.
Yeah, when I tried at the beginning to have it on before I was getting headaches, but yeah, it's a little blurry.
I also think if I was playing it for the first time, like you were, playing it in 2D is probably actually appropriate. In some ways, playing it in 3D was kind of like, oh, this is a special bonus version. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wanted to play it kind of more true to form like that.
Yeah. And I also noticed if I brought the slider about halfway down, then a lot of that kind of ghosting or whatever, I don't even know what to call it, but basically you'd get Link in proper 3D and you'd your one eye would kind of still catch a little bit of Link on one side and a little bit on the other side. And sometimes it would be pushed a little too far. I still mostly played this in 3D though, just to try to experience it because I played the 64 version, 9-10 times through. I'm sure people played a lot more than that. And so I've had all these little shots kind of memorized and it was kind of fun to see it in a new way. Yeah. But that's interesting.
I will certainly say though, that isn't an issue with Ocarina of Time being ported to the 3DS. 3DS is just like that.
What? like how the 3D works?
The 3D is kind of wonky in like all the games.
The 3D, were we playing a 3DS XL or a new 3DS or original?
Just an original 3DS.
Well, that might be part of it too.
I was going to say, if it's a newer one, maybe it got fixed. But I remember even back when I was playing as a kid, I never kept the 3D on.
The first couple generations of the 3DS, you had to be in a very specific spot for it to work.
Yep.
In the later versions, and I ended up just by accident getting the oldest version, or rather the most recent version. Mm-hmm. So in the line of 3DSs, I got like a 3DS XL Galaxy Edition. I mean, that's literally nice, all that was being sold at the stores when I just needed to get a 3DS. And when the new 3DS came out, I think they added in software that would track your face. Really? So you can move and it stays in 3D.
That's really cool.
Maybe I'll show it to you when between recording. I'll pull my 3DS out and you can see it. But still, with that said, there's still a little bit of ghosting. So you can kind of like hold it. And even if you move, when you start aiming with the arrows with motion controls, which certainly was not in the original, motion controls didn't even exist back then. The 3D pretty much stays accurate and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting.
I will say I am a sucker for motion control arrow firing.
Yeah, motion control aiming is the best use of motion controls of all video games ever, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And no, it's so nice.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because that's a good example, not to get too far off, but with all the motion controls that were in Skyward Sword originally with the Wiimote, it was like, okay, cool, you can fire your arrows. Look, you're pulling back. It's just like you're pulling back a real bow and arrow and all this stuff. I feel like dialing into that middle ground, which is what Breath of the Wild did. And now, of course, predating Breath of the Wild, I guess Ocarina of Time 3D maybe did first, is whenever you pull the arrow out, they just let you wiggle the device around a little bit and it helps you aim.
Yeah, because I had to turn the motion controls off for Skyward Sword.
Yeah. Well, it's because you have to keep recalibrating.
Yeah, I kept recalibrating. It was a little bit too much.
So what they do in this game is it recalibrates every time you go into arrow mode. And that's so brilliant.
And also, if you are moving it around, you can just press the R and L button and it recenters for you.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know that.
It's so nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, they did a really good job with the controls of this game. I will say that. I found it really easy to play and really easy to kind of like grab onto.
Yeah.
And with that, I love the ocarina. I love it so much.
And that's so fascinating because you play it in a very different way in this game than you do in the original.
How do you play it in the original?
Well, the original is buttons, but you're doing it on I don't even know if I've got one right here. Sorry, I'm grabbing a Nintendo 64 controller. You would play it on the C buttons and the A button.
Oh.
And so you would be like, boop, boop, beep, 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 beep. And they kind of emulated
an actual ocarina.
And the buttons, and I'm holding up an actual ocarina and a Nintendo 64 controller right now. And they that's actually, they joked in the making of it that they chose an ocarina because the controller kind of felt like one.
Yeah.
You see the similarities there?
No, absolutely.
And so the idea that you'd be kind of pressing these little holes on an ocarina, the buttons on the Nintendo 64 controller kind of felt similar. Now, of course, on the 3DS, and I'm okay with it, but on the 3DS, you're doing face buttons, you're doing shoulder buttons. It's not quite an analog to an ocarina.
No, absolutely. Not broken,
but
I've never really looked at a N64 controller before. So like seeing them side by side, I'm like, oh yeah, that literally does look a lot like an ocarina. You would play it with your
right hand in that part and your left hand in the middle. Put your left hand down in the middle.
What?
There you go. That's how you play Legend of Zelda. Is this your first time holding a Nintendo 64 controller?
Yes. I've never touched one before. I've never seen one in person before. This is crazy.
My mind is blown.
Holding it in the middle is crazy.
That's how they did it.
No, that's so cool. I'll have to play that at some point.
Wow.
Man.
Wow. I had no idea. And so yeah, playing the ocarina is a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the physical buttons are kind of, for me, it was like, why am I using shoulder buttons to do notes?
Yeah.
I'm so used to the thing. However, the fact that you memorize the songs, you get to play the songs kind of anytime you want. I think that's probably more what you're speaking to.
Exactly. No, I love, first off, the music in Ocarina is like next level. It's so good and it's so beautiful. And so then getting to play, and one of my favorite parts is when Sheik teaches you new songs and you play together.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. And then they always do like the little cut scene around you as you're playing and like the environment you're in. Oh.
Yeah, oftentimes the camera's circling around the two of you. They get really creative in some of the later ones where they're doing like, just fades, pan fades of like the faces and stuff. Again, with that cinematic camera work.
Will absolutely say the Goron region one, that one sticks in my head the most probably.
That one?
Well, not the music, but I was gonna say not the music of it, but the cinematicness of it.
I was thinking of just the normal Goron music. You're talking about the Sheik thing in the volcano.
Playing. Yeah,
love it.
With
Absolutely
the volcano and showing like the lava behind you. Oh,
100%.
It's so good.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
But yeah,
I see what you're saying.
It's so good. Also, didn't realize Skull Kids were like actual things.
Yeah.
Because I only knew Majora's Mask with the Skull Kid.
Right.
So when I ran into one in the forest, I was like,
were you like, hello? Is this the Majora's Mask without a Majora's Mask?
Yeah, I was like, is this Majora's Mask Skull Kid? And then you run into more. And I'm like, oh, there's just like a group of these guys.
Yeah. Skull Kids come back around in a few other games. And the craziest thing about Majora's Mask is that it is just a Skull Kid that finds the mask.
That's what's crazy, because I thought it was like...
the whole look.
Yeah. Like the whole look I thought was him.
Here's the action figure. The whole look of Majora's Mask, that's actually just a Skull Kid.
Well, yeah.
And Majora's the mask is the enemy.
That's what I was saying. Like, I thought like the costume and everything was like a part of it, but like that's just how he looks. So that was like a really cool moment too.
Let's continue with a few other big takeaways. Then we'll go to break, and then we'll just kind of maybe walk through the dungeons and some of the characters and stuff. Okay. Let's see some other things. One thing that was different is the 3DS has fewer face buttons than a Nintendo 64 controller. So in the original, see all these yellow C buttons here? You would map your items to those. And so you'd kind of have your sword and your action or whatever. And then you would go into your menu and throw all your items onto these yellow buttons over here on the side.
Oh, that's kind of nice, though.
I liked it. It's really, visually, it makes a lot of sense on the controller. Like it was really well thought out. On the 3DS, you've got your normal kind of XYZ AB thing. So they could only put two... They could only use 2 instead of the 4. So they ended up making that Roman numeral 1 and Roman numeral 2 slot on the secondary lower screen.
That's why they do
where you could put items there so that it could have the same amount of items. And technically you get one extra one on the 3DS to put items there. How did you feel about needing to use the screen to like touch some of those buttons?
I would forget sometimes, but it wasn't a bad thing at all, because I normally, when I was going about things, I really only needed 1 or 2 items at any given point in time. Yeah. So just mapping them and then just keeping like my fairy bottle on like a 1 or 2.
Yeah. Or I'll throw the ocarina there or something.
Yeah, something that I don't use as often. Right. And then making like my Deku nuts or like my hook shot or whatever made it a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I felt like it made a lot of sense gameplay wise how they set it up.
The menu that's on the screen below is usually just in the pause menu, at least on the 64 version.
Okay.
How did you in general feel about the not trying to compare it to the 64 version? How did you feel just about the relationship of the two screens and playing the game? And you had an analog stick on your 3DS, right? Yeah, okay.
Like a little C stick.
I think all the 3DSs did.
Yeah.
Well, you might have the little C stick nub, but you definitely had the left analog slider, I think, right?
Yeah.
This guy right here on a 3DS? Yeah.
Yeah, one of those things.
Oh, here's my 3DS. Yeah, keep going.
Oh, yeah. But the relationship between the two screens, I love that. Yeah. This is exactly how mine looks. It's just mine is a lot smaller because you have the XL version.
Do you have that little gray nub there on the right?
This? No, I don't have that.
So that's basically a right analog stick. And on Majora's Mask, it actually moves the camera. It's really weird. But I don't want to get too far into visuals because there's an audio show.
Actually turned on, but it's...
Oh, no, that's fine. It's
so pretty. Mine is not as pretty as that. I need to get a newer one. But yeah, no, anyway, gosh, I'm rambling.
No, I'm taking you off because I'm like pulling all this stuff out.
the relationship between the two screens. I really enjoyed it. I think that it was very smooth, very easy to operate. And a lot of times, this is like kind of off topic, but my brain is running at like 5 miles an hour right now. Very slow. So in the game, when you save and you close out, you always start back at your house or
the beginning of the dungeon. I'd like to talk about this. Keep going.
So my solution to this, and what I spread to my roommate Sierra as well, because she also, me and her have started to play the games at the same time as each other.
Oh, we're using the same system?
Yeah.
Okay.
I told her what I did, and so we both did this. We would just hit the home or the start button to pause.
Yep.
Close it and plug it in.
And it would technically use a little bit of power, but it's like in a sleep state. You're absolutely right.
And then I would just open it back up and keep playing. I don't think after like the first 2 or 3 times, I don't think I ever turned that thing off until I finished the game.
So when I played the original Ocarina of Time, every time you paused, if you went out, you would push the B button. It would say like, would you like to save? And you just kind of pushed yes. And so every time you put that cartridge back into the system and you were going to play the next day, you'd start at the house or you'd start at the top of a dungeon. I had an experience in the fire dungeon. It took me like a month to do the fire dungeon this time around, partly because I only had maybe I'd have like 15 minutes a night to really play.
Sucks.
I was never able to really do a dungeon all the way through. I did the water dungeon all the way through just because I gave myself an evening. The water dungeon's a lot easier on the 3DS one. We'll talk about it.
Really? Yeah. I got a lot to say about that water dungeon.
Okay. All right. They made some graphical cues and they made some changes to the UI to make it easier. But I ended up playing the volcano, the fire dungeon. I think I probably what I didn't do is do the sleep thing that you're talking about, the sleep hack, right?
Yeah.
I would save my game, quit out, and then every time I'd start in the big top of the dungeon, it had been half a week or something. I'd be like, wait, what was I doing? Where was I going? Oh, and I kind of forgot about keys. And so I'd meander around for 10 minutes, find another Goron to free or something like that. And then I'd have to like move on to the next thing I had to do that night. And so I'd save and go out. And so many times I entered the fire dungeon, I think 20 times.
No, I could not. We've talked about this. I'm not a patient person.
Yeah.
Literally after that first time when I just respawned in Link's house, had to go back to Castle Town. I'm like, I'm not doing this.
you spend 5 or 10 minutes just getting back to where you were.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that was a thing in gaming that was acceptable back then. I mean, we definitely didn't have save state. It wasn't like, I mean, that technology existed, but it really wasn't part of video games back then. And I guess it was better than, I mean, you could save in Super Nintendo games, but a lot of video games for 5 years before that, if you died or you were done, you just, like if you're playing Super Mario Brothers 3, you just start from the beginning no matter what. And so I feel like having them start, there was probably some kind of latent accidental game design psychology of like, well, we'll have them start from that start spot. And I'm sure that's where that came from. But boy, oh boy, did it hit me hard this playthrough. And I was like, can't I just, Breath of the Wild now, Echoes of Wisdom, you just save wherever you are. Link's really standing in the exact same spot. The weather's the same, all that stuff. I'm so grateful for that kind of those kind of save mechanics by today's standards. Yeah,
I will say, I think it is the forest dungeon that starts with the 2 wolves outside.
Yep.
So that was the first dungeon. So I did die a few times. And the rage I felt when I realized that I would be put back outside every single time was insane. I was like, what is happening? Is this how it's supposed to work?
And I think they wanted to kind of heighten that when you die, you die. Or
and that's the thing. I'm like, oh, okay. No, I like looking back on it now, I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. Like it raises the stakes. But at the time, I was still used to like, oh, like that still really matter. It's just like, oh, game over. It's okay. Whereas back then, it was like, no, like, you're done. Like you got to start over.
And if you're playing Adventure of Link, if you're playing the Nintendo games, when you get game over, you are done. Like you have to
crazy to
for
me.
Link, the Adventure of Link, unless you're getting real clever, you actually start the game over after a game over.
Man,
you start from ground zero. That's why that one's so tough.
Oh, I know I'm gonna have to play it at some point, but I'm gonna have some rage.
The only way I've ever been able to really truly like play it is with save states. I have to admit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Where you're like, you go to town, you heart up, and you save, and you know what I mean? But anyway.
That's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm doing that same with Majora's Mask. If I don't have like a save near me, just
Well, now in
Close
Majora's
it.
Mask, they actually added a bunch of extra save points in the
Which
levels.
is nice.
Because I think they were starting to realize, it's a mobile. People are playing this mobile and stuff. And we'll save that for our Majora's Mask 3D
absolutely.
conversation when that inevitably happens. But let's see, to pull it back to Ocarina, the save state thing. I was kind of like the first couple times like, oh yeah, that's cool. I started at the beginning of the dungeon, and then it really took me about 2 or 3 weeks where I really noticed. I was like, why is this taking me forever to get through the fire dungeon? And I realized that it was taking me 5 minutes just to get to the place where I left off. Now there is that Furor's, the green magic that you can get that technically you can save and warp in, but I just didn't have it at the time. I didn't find. I used to get it a lot sooner. I wasn't paying attention. But if you don't have that,
yeah.
So that kind of hurt, but I'm kind of glad they kept it in. The graphics are all redone.
They look great.
Yeah, the model, they're new models. The models look pretty nice. Way higher polygon count. And the other thing I noticed that in the original Ocarina of Time, there's a lot of things in the distance that are probably just like a single image, like a JPEG or something. There's like a town, Kakariko Village from Death Mountain is definitely just a flat polygon. That's a drawing.
Yeah.
There's a couple times like in Castle Town, when you're running around Castle Town, all of that is just almost like Final Fantasy VII, just a JPEG with characters in front of it. For this game, it was very clear that they actually modeled all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because when you flip that 3D slider up, it's properly in 3D. And that's why they did it. That was very cool.
I was going to say, Castletown was so fun. I loved how much was going on there. It looked great. Another gameplay thing that I really enjoyed that new games haven't even been doing anymore is with Epona being able, wherever you're at, to call her, pick her up, and go. Well, I guess not like wherever you're at, anywhere within like that main area.
Okay.
Whereas even with some of the newer games, it's like, oh, your horse is too far. Or
like the breaths and the tears.
Breaths and tears, and also later in Echoes. It's like, I like being able just to call my little horsey and quickly run wherever I like.
And it's so fascinating because then in Twilight Princess, again, one of my favorite Zelda games, you can only call Epona at contextual points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like even almost worse in that way. Calling Epona anytime you need, I think is wonderful. You're absolutely right. Just kind of the horseback riding in the first place was kind of a newer thing in video games.
They did very well with it, though.
Yeah.
Especially going that extra mile and doing the archery game with the Gerudo.
I agree.
Like, especially if horseback riding was newer.
Shadow of the Colossus came out around this same time, maybe within a year or two, maybe a few years after, but it also kind of had pretty good horse riding. But there wasn't just the fact that you could even get... Oh, did you know that Epona wasn't originally planned to be in the game? And it was really Miyamoto who really pushed for it.
Well, he knows what he was doing. That's why he's so big over there.
And I think they, so how did you feel about, the time jump, young Link, old Link, stuff like that?
Oh, I love it. And I love the devastating lore behind it.
Yeah, cool.
The end of the game. Sorry, I'm like jumping all the way to the end.
It's fine.
Where you get sent back in time again. And I'm like, but then all these people that I just met and they don't know me. And I know it ends with like a little cutscene of Link going back to Zelda, but I'm like, how is that conversation even going to start?
I agree.
So it's like, it's almost devastating in a way. And then you start, again, not going into Majora's, but you start Majora's just like doing your own thing. And it's like, that's kind of sad.
Well, yeah, Majora is a direct sequel to Ocarina, and it's from the child timeline. And it's Link trying to find Navi, who leaves at the end of Ocarina.
Yeah.
So I think in Majora they keep it simple. They just say like Link's looking for a friend, but it's been discussed that that's Navi that he's trying to find.
Wow.
Does the end of the game help you understand the split timeline theory a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, especially after finishing Ocarina, I'm like, and now starting to play Majora's and Wind Waker and all these different games that kind of connect in different ways. I need to get that little book that has like all the different timeline theories and just like go through them all and figure it out. Yeah. I love it.
Cool. Okay, great. I think what we'll do is we've been talking for a long time. It's a super long episode. I'm totally into it though. We're already like 50 minutes into this episode, but we did burn like 20 just catching up. I'll be honest with you. Any other final takeaways? I actually took a few more notes about some of my observations, but I don't know if I didn't save them or something. They're not in the notes where I put them earlier. So I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here with some things. But were there any other major takeaways with playing the game? Maybe any other major takeaways playing it as someone who's playing the games, not in reverse order, but, going back into the old ones?
Yeah, kind of in reverse order. I mean, a lot of it's, like I said before, it takes me a second because I'm like, this looks and feels so different. Because it's not that the games are not saying the past games were bad, but it's not that they're progressively getting like better graphics, better controls. It's like I'm going in reverse. And so I'm like, sometimes it's a little frustrating because I'm like, why is this not doing exactly what I want it to do? Why is this glitching? Why is this whatever? Yeah. And that's fine. And it's part of the charm. And it's what I've come to love about the games. And that's what I was saying, like actually sitting down and like playing the game and appreciating the game.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where I have to completely relearn how to play a Zelda game every time I play one of the new ones.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, that was one of my difficulties for like the Super Nintendo game. Is sometimes you have to learn, or even playing the original, like you can't even walk on an angle. And you just have to learn like, okay, this is what I can do in this game. And it's okay. Don't let it get frustrating. One example of that in Ocarina of Time, in my opinion, is arguably no camera controls.
Yes.
How'd you do with that?
That was difficult. It was difficult to get used to because especially the camera can be a little bit wonky sometimes because I do want to do those cinematic like sweeps and stuff. Yeah. So sometimes it'll get stuck on a wall or like it won't be exactly where I want it and I have to like leave the area and like recircle so like the camera can reset and like come back. And it was one of those things that like it takes some getting used to. The
part of the decision behind that, because Ocarina of Time was being developed at the same time as Super Mario 64, and I did a whole Zelda 64 episode a couple seasons ago about the making of Ocarina of Time. But there was a lot of, because this in Super Mario 64, these yellow C buttons here controlled the camera, a bit like what a C stick would now. So you'd move the camera right, left, up, down, and all the rest. That's why it was kind of jokingly called the C buttons, because it was kind of like, oh, it's the camera buttons for most games.
That is the C button?
These are the C buttons here, these yellow ones.
I'm going to be so real. I always thought the little circle guy on the 3DS was what the C button was.
I don't know what you're talking about, but see how this is C up. So it was really weird in instruction manuals. It's C up, C down, C left, and C right is what those buttons are called.
Yeah. So with the 3DS right here. Sorry, people. Tune in on the Patreon.
Oh boy, oh boy.
I thought this was the C button.
Well, that would be the left control, the left analog stick.
Yeah, I just thought that's what they called it on like the older consoles. It was so real.
Really? Wow. Yeah, sure. Well, so what happened was with Super Mario 64, they used the yellow C buttons to move the camera, but they wanted to use them for the item selection in Zelda. And in some ways, it was really cool because remember, this did come out after Link's Awakening, and I know that you've only played the Switch version, but the original Link's Awakening, which maybe we'll have you play at least a dungeon or two someday.
Yeah, is it like a side scroller where you go to the next room?
Not a side scroller. It's a top down. But your items are only on A and B. So whenever you want to switch items, you got to go into pause menu and reassign them. Yes. So that's what we as players were used to doing back in like 1993. It's like, well, you just take your items and you assign them to the buttons. And actually at the time, that was kind of a novel idea, even the very first Zelda, where it was like, wait, B isn't always just the one thing. Like, because before that, it would be, if you think about computer games, it was like you had, all the keys on a keyboard. You'd have your E button for, the B button for bomb, the D button for dagger or whatever. Yeah. And then when the console games started happening, we only had the buttons. The idea that you could assign items and tasks to the buttons in a Zelda game was kind of novel at the time. So by having them use pretty much, at least, they used the bottom 3 C buttons here, and the top one was to go into first person view on 64. So with the camera, they were like, well, we can't use the C buttons for camera. And I think it was Miyamoto, but I don't know. The team just decided, well, honestly, with a game like this, an adventure game where you're playing as Link, and it's, Mario game, you do need to be zoomed out and a little bit more aware of your spatial, because you're making these jumps and stuff like that. They realized that with the Zelda game, it wasn't really a platformer, and so if you controlled the camera by essentially lining Link up and then tapping that Z button to bring the camera behind, they decided that was good enough. And then what you would do is, if you really needed to look around, you'd push C up and go into his head, and then I'm bumping my mic like crazy. And then you could kind of get a lay of the land and then come back out and be behind Link.
Okay.
So that was a choice. Also a choice was this is one of the first times that there was an auto jump.
Yes.
Where you just jump when you hit the edge of a thing.
And that stuck around for most of the Zelda games going forward.
Stuck around all the way through Skyward Sword.
Yeah. Because I remember when I moved to Skyward, because I think that was the first Zelda game I really played that was a bit older after the Breath and Tears series.
It was.
That took me a while to get used to.
That you couldn't just jump on things and climb them.
That I couldn't just jump, and I would just be like, oh, I can make that. And then I would run, and he wouldn't jump because you're not supposed to jump there, and you just fall off the edge. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do remember the first time going around, even just the Kakiri Forest, and just hopping along the little I guess logs or stones
I like that you get
over
some
the water.
rupees if you jump across.
Absolutely. That was awesome. That was so cool. It was like, oh, I don't even have to, of course, this isn't a platformer. You don't have to worry about jumping. This is an adventure game.
Yes.
The point is the adventure. The point is the puzzles. The point is this journey, not like, can I exactly make that jump? Which, interestingly enough, I think the next time we had an assigned button was X on Breath of the Wild, but it took me a little getting used to, we'll talk about this in our next episode, having a jump button in Echoes of Wisdom. Like a proper jump button was kind of like weird at first for me.
Yeah, because Link's Awakening, you couldn't jump? Or no, you could, but you had to get the Pegasus boots.
Yep. Feather. No. Pegasus boots, I think, help you run. That was the run. But once you get the feather that helps you jump, you could assign it and jump then. And you get it pretty early on. You get it in the first dungeon. So you could jump in Link's Awakening, but it was an item that you assigned. Yeah,
which that was going back and talking about how Ocarina has the little buttons you can self-assign. That was like renowned to me playing Link's Awakening too, going back, because that still is like a thing where you don't really see that much. So going back and being like, I have to assign a button to jump, I have to assign a button to run. Like that was kind of, it was cool to me, kind of seeing like, oh, okay, I'm using all these different like little items.
Yeah. Also, there was a lot of talk. We'll go to break here now. After I mention this one, I think this is the last thing I had in my notes. I'm kind of, like I said, doing this off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. The last thing that was kind of novel and groundbreaking in Ocarina of Time, which was also then further expressed here in the 3D remake, was a contextually sensitive B button. So the idea that the B button would change, it would say attack or climb or open. That kind of thing was really novel when Ocarina of Time came out. The idea that not only are you taking the C buttons and assigning whatever you want to them, but that your A button was always sword, but that your B button would change for the context of what you were in. Mm-hmm. I remember reading entire articles in video game magazines about this. They were like, the B button's going to change. It's going to be crazy. Like, how are people going to handle this?
That's really cool.
Yeah, now contextually sensitive UI is like a normal thing in video games.
Yeah, but that's awesome. It's like one of those things. It's so great having these conversations with you, because it's these things that I don't get this context ever. To me, it's like, this is forever ago, but this came out not that long ago. It wasn't even,
I think it was 99. I might not have that fully memorized. Yeah,
but like
20 years ago,
all things considered, it's not that long ago. But for me, I'm like, that was like I don't know any of it, because I really started with, I mean, my cousin lent us gave us his Game Boy Color. But I didn't really mess around on that at all. So really my first console was the 3DS and the Xbox.
Wow.
So I like, it's very cool getting to like hear how crazy these things were.
Cool. Well, if you don't mind, let's go to break and we'll come back and I think we should just, we could talk about this all day long. It's cool. This is a longer episode. It's our first episode back into season 7. It's an Ocarina of Time episode. Yeah. There's a lot to talk about when you're talking about Ocarina of Time. But I think when we come back, we'll talk about some of our characters real quick, and then kind of just push through the 6 main dungeon experiences, and maybe talk about the bosses a little bit, and just kind of what the experience of playing the game was like. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Marvelous. Okay, I'll see you, in a minute or two. I'll see you after our audience hears about, hopefully, unless it's a dynamic ad and it's already changed, hopefully an artificial podcast.
Hopefully artificial podcast.
Oh my goodness. Kady, we are back, and I caught you just as you're taking a sip of your tea there. I'm so sorry about that. How you doing? There it is.
I'm doing great. Thanks.
All right, let's just get right in.
Yes.
Well, let's do some characters first. How do you feel about Link in this game?
Link is fun in this game.
Okay.
He's definitely one of the Links, though, that doesn't have too much character. He's very much a blank slate, so you can kind of project onto him.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. A little model for me to hold.
There's the Nintendo World Link right there.
He's very cute. I love his design, though. The white is really cute. I will say Little Link should probably put some pants on. He's running around a little free-spirited. But, if you're a child forever, that's what kid wants to wear pants, really.
The first time he climbed into a tunnel, I was like, where are we going?
Yeah. Like, where's that camera going? Yeah, but no, he's cute. It is definitely more of a thing of the other characters. You learn about more of the relationship other characters have with him. which I can't complain.
Young Link was decided halfway through the design process. Originally, they were just building an older Link.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I spoke about it in my Zelda 64 episode, but I think there was a notion that like if the game started with Young Link, some kids would be more inclined to play it and stuff like that. And then you kind of grow with him as the game gets more difficult. It makes sense, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I will say too, with I think this kind of did start that Young Link pattern in the Zelda games. Of
Link being like basically a child?
Yeah, because then after Ocarina, you start having like Wind Waker and those kind of games where he is very obviously a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because people really took to the Young Link because it's fun playing as a kid, and it's fun, especially, I keep bringing up Majora's Mask. I'm so sorry. It's fun, especially when you go to Majora's Mask and you like run to leave and the guard stops you being like, I can't let a kid out. And then he's like, oh wait, you have a sword. I'm sorry, my good sir. Like, you must obviously be a man. And I'm like standing there at 4'8".
Yeah.
It's so cute.
And those soldiers are mechanically kind of the Mito of Majora's Mask. How Mito won't let you go to the Deku Tree until you get your sword and your shield,
Exactly.
It's like that's how they help you kind of learn things. Link was originally in Ocarina of Time. They were considering having it. They were considering that it would actually be a first person game, and you would play from Link's point of view. And there was a lot of tech demos of just like you just walk around.
That would be interesting to see.
And the idea was, again, with Super Mario 64, it was all about third person going from area to area. They wanted the Legend of Zelda to feel more like an adventure game, and again, they wanted to make that connection with Link be more. Link not talking, like you are Link. You play as Mario, but you are Link. Is kind of was the idea. You know what I mean? And they ultimately put so much work into the model, though, that the guys who worked on the actual model, they were like, please, no, and we got to put the camera behind. And they ended up going, yeah, let's put it behind. And because they also realized you can identify with the character a little bit more, blah, 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 blah.
Well, yeah, no, I think the model, like, that was a good take. I think that's one of the most exciting things for me for playing new Zelda games is seeing what Link looks like in this game specifically.
Cool.
I think it's so fun. Saria.
Yes.
I love her.
I know.
I love her so much. And I like her like almost sibling-y kind of relationship with Link, but I know some people lean more into the romantic side.
It felt romantic to me, but the sibling thing's cool too. I like that take.
Yeah, I think it's mainly because I've seen in a lot of Zelda games with Link having a little sister. I guess not a lot of Zelda games, but a decent amount.
Well, Wind Waker, he has a little sister. Is there any others?
Is there more? I could have swore there was more where he had a sister, but maybe it is just Wind Waker. But in my brain, I think maybe it might even be I just heard that in Wind Waker and I assumed there were games I haven't played yet where he had a sister. But
no worries.
Because it is also a common thing that people do. Me reading my Breath of the Wild fan fictions, but a lot of them gave him a little sister back in the day and like that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's something people really took to. So for me, also having an older brother, I normally project that onto things I play.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
I really enjoyed her, and it was one of those things too when he ages up and he goes back, and it's like you're not supposed to be here anymore. Yeah. Like you're gone, man. You're an outcast now.
And there wasn't anything specifically, I guess, romantic about their relationship, but it felt like there was like an adjacent love or an adjacent kind of, maybe there was that sibling thing kind of comes in there. Like I never felt like, pardon me, but like he wanted to kiss her or anything like that. Yeah, it just felt like an admiration for each other, but like there was like a what if or if we could. I could also see it
as like a young love kind of thing. Like I definitely see that take of, that kind of like, looking at each other, just getting a little nervous, getting little butterflies, because they are kids in this.
When he leaves on the I almost said the bench. When he leaves on the bridge, do you think she knows at that point that he's not really supposed to be there? Because that shot where they pull away from her watching him,
she realizes. I think she knew, like, if you leave here, you're gonna grow up, and she kind of had that moment.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
she knows he's gonna grow up,
and she's like, I don't want to stop that for you because you deserve to be able to go and grow up and live your life. But I'm not gonna, like, things aren't gonna be the same anymore between us because you're gonna grow up, I'm gonna stay a kid, and we're gonna be completely two different people.
And he might not have fully realized that at the time, and so then when he comes back as an adult,
didn't know.
Yeah, but she did. I think
she did. I think she had that moment, and that's why I really like that part. And then when you do come back to Saria, you have another. You grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And you left.
There's a lot of we maybe should have talked about this before the break, but there's a lot of like grow up themes, not just the literal aging of the whatever 7 to 14 or whatever it is, 10 to 16 or whatever people say it actually is in the game. I know it's a 7-year jump. But there's a lot of characters that speak to Link about like, oh, you're becoming a man now, or look at you grow, look at your, or others saying you're just a child, even in the 14-year-old version of Link or whatever, 17-year-old version of Link. Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things too, talking to where my heart was at, where I'm like, why are we going back in time and sending him back? It's because he grew up.
You mean at the end?
Yeah. It's like he just grew up and now you're sending him back and he's now going to be a child, but his brain, he's still gone through all that.
Right. Which is what informs his disposition in Majora's Mask.
Exactly.
He's a 17-year-old in a 10-year-old's body in that way, at least from an experience point of view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just the themes of that. I've always been such a sucker for stuff kind of dealing with that, of like the whole coming back after the war and everyone stayed the same, but you've changed, almost like a Frodo Baggins type situation from Lord of the Rings. And just being like, how do you continue those relationships?
I completely agree. And I always figured that he went back because him, I guess, going forward or being frozen in time wasn't really part of the plan. It was, the whole Ganondorf thing, the whole Ganon thing. It wasn't like he jumped forward and then the problem began. The problem began before he jumped forward.
No, absolutely.
And so they had to go back to there, I think.
Yeah, and I think it was a perfect way to end. I'm just not denying the devastation of that.
Yeah, sure.
Because it really is one of those things too of like, he might have jumped forward in time, but technically he's not supposed to be there yet. So he still has to go back, but now things are so wonky.
Well, one of the justifications for one of the timeline threads, because this is the game that Nintendo has decided to have 3 threads go out of, is that the young Link timeline, where he does go back, he off screen after the game, maybe even between Ocarina and Majora's, is able to tell the king about Ganondorf, because Ganondorf exists in that timeline in the beginning. And so Ganondorf is never able to rise to power in the young Link timeline coming out of Ocarina. So because Link goes through the whole journey, defeats Ganon in that other timeline where he's an adult, which does have other games come after it, when he goes back at the end of Ocarina and is a kid, the idea is that the problem never happens because he's able to let the king know, like, don't trust this guy.
I love that.
So, how do you feel about Zelda?
Oh, at first I was like, because when you meet her, she's a kid, which it was kind of a cool cutscene of Ganon taking her away, Link trying to stop him, getting smacked to the side. That was cool.
Yeah.
But at first, when she got taken, I was just like, okay, she's gone. All right, I don't really know this girl, but all right.
Another cutscene is when Link finds her in the courtyard. I thought was super cool.
Yes. No, I think all the cutscenes with Zelda were very well done in this game, and especially later on when she becomes Sheik, which I think I talked about this on one of the episodes before, but my introduction to Sheik was when I was a kid playing Smash Bros.
Yep.
And I thought Sheik was a guy still. And I was like, wow, Sheik is really cute. Oh! I was like, wow. And then I found out Sheik was Zelda. And I was like, that's even cuter. That's cool. I was like, that's amazing. And so now getting to go back and play the game that Sheik is from, I felt like my little heart, like, so excited. Because I'm like, I finally get to see Sheik in, like, her natural element. And I love the relationship between her and Link and how she becomes, like, Link's mentor through the game.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The first time playing it, not knowing that lore, myself and everyone else I spoke to, like, we definitely didn't see it coming at all. You're just like, who's this mysterious person? You're almost wondering if they're a good person or a bad person.
Yeah.
Do they have, a mysterious intent? And this idea, if you kind of use your headcanon a little bit and put Zelda going through these 7 years while Link's frozen, basically, I guess, taking on the identity of Sheik over those 7 years and doing what she can, and then being there to be ready for Link. There's a whole story there that could be fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool because this is one of the first Zelda games where Zelda really does play a pivotal part in the story.
Yeah.
And she gets so much of a bigger role, and then to the point where now we have Echoes of Wisdom, which is literally your Zelda. And I think it's such a cool arc for me playing Ocarina and then immediately going and playing Echoes to see that progress over the years for her.
Fascinating. Yeah, you're kind of both ends of the spectrum. In the Nintendo games, she is just a sprite at the end of the game. She is save our princess in our castle. You know what I mean? But that's where video games were at that point. This was the beginning of her becoming a real character. The fact that she aids you in the end when the castle's falling apart and all that stuff, which we'll talk about, I guess, at the end of the episode here. All of that was really kind of new and cool. She follows Link around a little bit in the Super Nintendo game, but really he's just like, come with me if you want to live. You know what I mean? And that's about it. She has a little bit of agency at the end, but really this was the first game where you're seeing Zelda be a character. And then when you learn that she is also Sheik, and you're realizing there's a fully developed character there, it's really cool.
And it's one of those first games where she's not just this princess damsel in distress. She's actively been working over these years. She can fight. She can teach you. She like actively is working with you. And it's so cool to see. And then later on playing like Skyward and seeing that relationship there, and then Echoes and Breath. It's like, since Ocarina, I feel like the relationship between Link and Zelda really starts to grow because they realize how much people really latched onto it.
This game also is the birth of the idea of the Sheikah.
Yes, I was going to say that too. It's very interesting with her being the last of the Sheikah, as she says, and just kind of figuring out what that means for her.
I also think that this is a great transition into us talking about Impa then.
Oh my gosh, yes. Impa, I love her design in this game. She's so cool.
She's hardcore.
She's really cool.
They changed her design just a little bit compared to the 64 one, and they also changed some of her poses. I noticed that she, in the Zelda cutscene in the original game, she had her arms crossed a lot more, and I think she had her arm out like she was talking to him and stuff like that. It was just a little bit different, but it's fine. I think it probably made her a more interesting character. I don't know. But there were tiny microscopic changes to Sheik in this version.
Yeah. And they might have...
I mean, Impa.
They might have changed it too, because normally arms crossed, very cut off, very aggressive. They might have changed that to try and make it so you want to listen to her more and not feel as intimidated, maybe.
I think so, because when I played the 64 version the first time, I was like, well, this person hates me.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think it was a good move because I really did love Impa. Yeah. I liked that she was a bit younger in this version with like the mentor kind of thing going on.
Wow. Yeah, I guess you're right. I never thought about that.
Yeah, this was one of the versions where she was younger. She was buff. She was cool. She was cool.
In release order, Impa was a complete reimagining of the character. In the first two, in the Nintendo games, let's just say, Impa was Zelda's nurse. She was just this kind of like, kind of roly-poly nurse that was just helping Link. And she wasn't even in the first game. She was in the instruction manual.
Yeah.
So Impa as a character has existed, but this was the first time where Impa was actually like, well, I don't know, to say a real character or whatever, something that was actually being realized in the game, where they were giving her an identity. They were giving her a culture, this Sheikah thing.
Yeah.
They kind of blend Sheikah into Kakariko Village. She says, is where my family came from, and eventually, obviously, in Breath of the Wild, we get like the full, real Sheikah situation. But this is the beginning of it all.
Which that was also really cool for me, going and seeing like she's from Kakariko. I was like, oh my god, this is literally like I was having a lot of those moments where I'm like seeing the different games taking from this specific game.
Yeah.
One instance, which we'll probably talk about the temple that he's from, but Rauru.
Yep.
From like I knew him from Tears of the Kingdom, so when I saw Rauru, Sage of Light. Wait a minute.
Well, I don't even know what you're talking about, because Rauru is a town in the Adventure of Link.
Really?
Yeah, Rauru was named after that town.
I didn't know that.
When Rauru came out in Ocarina, everyone was like, whoa, it's from Zelda 2.
Yeah, for me, I was like, whoa.
I know. It's
like
just, there's all these things
that
just keep going through. But and it's also why people freaked when they heard Rauru or saw Rauru in the Tears of the Kingdom trailer. They were like, we're getting Rauru back. And Rauru was kind of reinterpreted for Tears, but yeah.
Yeah, for me, I just watched it. I was like, well, he looks cool.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Oh, the Tears of the Kingdom trailer?
Yeah, because I didn't know. But it's one of those things going back. Same thing with Dampé. I went, and when I saw him, I was like, this is like Link's Awakening.
And this was the origin of Dampé.
Yeah.
The first game Dampé was ever in.
Really? Okay, because I played Link's Awakening HD, and he's in that.
Well, they added him in.
Which I didn't realize.
Oh, really? I feel like maybe we mentioned that on our episode, but maybe we didn't.
Yeah, you might have, and I might have just forgotten.
The Dampé cave builder, level builder thing was put into the game.
You did say that. But yeah, and I also like that just the Dompe love. He's been coming back in newer games now too, which is kind of cool. He's starting to become a character that's like a staple for me that I really like to see. Kind of like Beetle, my love and savior, Beetle.
No Beetle in Ocarina yet.
Unfortunately, but not every game can be perfect. But yeah,
I think we should keep moving. But is there any other? I mean, I guess let's speak to Ganondorf. This is the first time that Ganon was realized as a humanoid, as Ganondorf. Yes. This is the first time Ganondorf existed.
I love it. I love Ganondorf in this game. I love the origins of the Gerudo in this game and the lore behind them.
All that was new. Yeah,
getting to see their town and interact with them and kind of sneak around before you end up like befriending them, and then you can like really go explore and talk to them.
Totally.
I think this game did a really good job with the world building of everything. And I think that really shone through.
When this game was being made, and I stand corrected, the Gerudo are mentioned in some of the previous games, but you don't really like, Ganon coming from Gerudo and stuff like that, I think was somewhat mentioned before. But this is the first time we're really kind of seeing them as a culture. But this game, when it first came out, looking at it now, it feels not enormous, but it was epically large. The idea that you could actually go to these towns and have these really realized cultures compared to a couple sprites on a top-down map, which is what Link's Awakening was. Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past. There was like a lot of focus on the development of the game, and even in the marketing and what people were talking about, like, whoa, it was essentially a conversation about being in 3D instead of 2D.
Well, yeah.
But the fact that the Gerudo could have a realized area, the Zora and the Gorons were inventions for this game, but all of these characters, everything was, I'm rambling, but what I'm trying to say is everything was just able to be fleshed out more because of the new graphics, honestly. Yeah.
And I think what was also really cool about this game, especially with the Ganondorf situation, was if you play games like Breath and Tears, yes, they all have their own rulers, but they all listen to and work under Hyrule. This was a game where they all had their own rulers and they all behaved like they all had their own rulers. They had to do peace treaties and diplomacy and everything between all of them.
You are 100% right. And you felt that from playing the game?
Absolutely.
That's great.
And that was like a moment where I really enjoyed it, because with Breath, I was like, it was really cool, but there was none of that tension, none of that like different people type scenario, A
lot of people miss, like, the Zora Kingdom needs, they have a relationship with the Hylians.
Exactly. It's like they all have their own little relationships. But that being said, they all weren't just going to listen and serve under the Hyrule King, because why would they serve under that's not our kingdom. Like, right. We're worried about our own kingdom.
And maybe when we get to the spirit dungeon, there's implications of some of those cultures not aligning as well. And maybe we'll get to that in just a minute. I don't want to skip to it, but let's remember this moment. I do want to kind of keep moving, but any other takeaway? I think we did all the major characters here.
Malon's great.
Yeah, let's do Malon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's cute. Mm-hmm. I don't have like too much to say about her, but she's cute. I like her little Epona song.
Malon and Talon, in release order, came out after Marin and Terran from Link's Awakening. Clear, nod to those characters. I was going to say,
which I think is why a lot of people, like the person that commented today about Malon and Link.
Oh yeah, what was that? What was
the theory about Malon and Link getting together and passing down Epona song to Twilight Princess Link. Mm-hmm. I think that's why people lean into that so much, because even though the interactions with Malon weren't too huge in this game, it is because she comes from Link's Awakening, and those feelings never die.
You just said you feel that she comes from Link's Awakening? Because Link's Awakening is kind of like all in the dream.
Well, no, not like literally that she comes from that game, but in the sense of her character has been inspired from that character.
Yeah.
So the implications there already, it doesn't matter. They're just so perfect together in that previous game.
I agree. And we don't have to get too shippy, but I do feel that if you kind of track the game, I like this theory that was presented to us because, it's easy to assume a romantic relationship between Link and Zelda. And there's some games where that's more emphasized and some games where that's less emphasized. In some games, there's no romance at all between the two. Yeah. And I kind of feel that I went into Ocarina of Time back in 1999 and 1997, whatever it was, just assuming a romantic relationship between the two because there kind of was one in the Nintendo games and in the Legend of Zelda cartoon. Certainly it was very heavy. But if you really think about it, Zelda I think they have just kind of a relationship. There's yes, she's helping him at the end, but there's no hug, there's no kiss, there's no like thank you for saving me.
I felt like even going back in time then to the end when he like introduces himself to her again, there isn't really even a friendship there. It's just kind of like these two people that met under certain circumstances and then went their own ways.
Well, here's something that just blew my mind, and I'm just going to try to blow yours here by accident. I just realized that if Link did all of that and then went back in time, that means that Zelda she never became Sheik, never went through that. They never had the shared experience.
Exactly.
So as a kid, maybe that's what you're speaking to.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the kid Link and Zelda, he
they
probably
know nothing about each other.
Basically, he says, "Watch out for this Ganondorf guy," and then
he goes on his way and heads back to the forest.
I'm into. Oh wait, but then does Saria still exist, or did the sages die eternally? Are they gone forever?
I don't know. There's so much to speak to in this game. Yeah.
I felt, maybe it is because of the Marin thing, I felt like as a player, my heart went out to Malon a little bit. You know what I mean?
Because it is just one of those things where you actually do get to kind of have a little bit of a relationship with her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Malon's great. Talon needs to get it together, though.
Talon's a wreck. Like, I can see why the Luigi analog guy, I forget his name right now, Ingo, I think. Isn't that right? I think it's Ingo.
Something like that.
I could see why he's so upset, honestly. And I could see why he was just like ready to turn when Ganondorf came and said, "Hey, I'll make your life better."
Yeah, I'm like, okay, man. You sleep with your cuckoos. You do your own thing, I guess.
And they call it sleep, but we all know what's going on. He's drinking way too much milk.
Oh, yeah. He's having way too much milk.
Way too much milk.
Malon's out there working on the farm. And he's sleeping away.
And I'm sure you've gone to the Milk Bar in Majora's Mask now at some point in the city. Have you not yet?
Ooh.
Can you guess who is the bartender there?
Oh, yes, I did. Because I remember seeing Malon. And I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah.
I did. I remember that.
Cool. Okay, well, we did characters. Let's just go through. Let's just kind of quick hit the dungeons and our thoughts on them. We don't have to necessarily dig into every little moment here because we've actually, more than I expected, have had a pretty comprehensive conversation about this game already.
Yeah.
And I'm really quite pleased with it. But just to do our due diligence, what were your thoughts about the Deku tree? You'd played it once before, years ago-ish. Like you got to it and that was your part where you're like, I've done enough. All right, cool.
So I had like no memories really from it either. Yeah. So I went in pretty blind. I had a great time. The Skulltulas are a little annoying, but that's just how they are in every game because you have to like knock them around and then hit them. It was really fun. I enjoyed that one a lot. My roommate was screaming the entire time because she's scared of spiders, but you know.
Yeah, it's a great little dungeon. I love that you go into it not really fully realizing it's a dungeon yet.
Well, yeah.
You're kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this. And about halfway through, you're like, oh, I mean, I know the dungeon map comes up. We all know it's the trainer dungeon. Like every Zelda game has their first training dungeon or some version of it. But it's really cool that as a first player, you don't really pick up on that until you're about halfway through. Yeah,
I certainly didn't. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go do this thing. And then I'm like halfway through. I'm like, why do I have 3 keys?
How did you do with burning spider webs?
Ooh.
Because there's a couple spiderweb puzzles that aren't particularly intuitive. There's a couple spiderwebs you have to burn that some people get a hard lock on. They can't. For example, when you go through the spiderweb and get down into the lower parts of the dungeon, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, our friends, good old pals over at Zelda Dungeon, are my best friend playing.
You did a walkthrough.
They're my best friend in this game.
Oh my gosh.
They've also been my best friend through Majora's so far. Love you guys. You're great.
So the figuring out what to do element wasn't there as much.
No,
got it.
Not
Okay.
at all.
Okay. Noted.
I do not have the patience, nor do I have the mental capacity to figure out some puzzle.
Do you enjoy being lost in a video game and trying to figure out what you need to do? It's okay if the answer is no.
Sometimes. Yeah. Not all the time, though.
I feel that one of the strengths of Zelda games is that they make that sensation of being lost very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I will say some of the newer ones I've enjoyed. Some of the older ones, though, I feel like some of the things you have to do are very difficult to figure out.
Kady, I should say this for our next episode, but did you use a walkthrough for Echoes of Wisdom?
No.
Okay.
I played that completely blind. The only time I used a walkthrough was when I was almost done with the game, just to 100% and collect everything.
You've also told me that that's your second favorite Zelda game now.
It is.
I'm not trying to walkthrough shame you. I think walkthroughs are great and they're really important at certain times. But maybe like the journey through those dungeons and being your own emotional journey was part of that experience. But I don't want to tell you what your experience was.
No. You're completely correct. It's one of those things, though, where with those older games, I think what my big thing that I realized is I am a completionist. I want to get everything, and I don't like backtracking. So a lot of times I do use the walkthrough to make sure I get every chest.
Yeah,
I
get all the skull or the little skull.
I get all the skulltulas.
Skulltulas, that's it. Yeah.
I think. So with that, following the walkthrough.
Yeah.
And I get into a rhythm of just like hit this part. Okay, let me look and see what to do.
Yeah,
okay,
cool.
wait, keep going. Yeah. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Well, at the same time, too, I think as the vernacular of games has matured and become more nuanced, the being able to suss out what to do next is probably communicated through the level design and through the games a little bit better now.
Yeah.
I thought Echoes of Wisdom did a great job of that. We'll save it for our next episode.
Absolutely.
And I think so. Like there was one time like Breath of the Wild was so cool because it had a physics system and you kind of could deduce, like, if I have fire, I can probably burn grass and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But back in Ocarina of Time days, it wasn't intuitively obvious that you could burn a spider web.
Mm-hmm. That's where I had a really hard time. It was that thing of, like, the intuition, like you were saying. Whereas when I hopped over to Wind Waker, they started building that in a lot better. But there were still times where I'm, like, playing tag or like hide and seek with the kids. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know I'm supposed to roll into this specific tree to get this kid out?
Right. And yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. And sometimes people just keep rolling and running around or they roll into it by accident. And that's like the story they tell. But it also means they play for 5 hours until it happens. And that can be frustrating.
And I don't got the patience.
I hear you. There's a classic moment in the beginning of Twilight Princess, and I'm not ruining anything. It's in the first hour of gameplay where you have to specifically decide to use the fishing rod to fish for a fish in a very specific part of a river so that when you pull it out, a cat will grab it and run away. Mm-hmm. And there is just no context clues.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like that is one thing that I've struggled going back to play different Zelda games because there is a lot of those moments where there is not any context as to what to do. And when you do it, you're like, okay, that makes sense. But before you get there, it's like, I tried all these different things. Nothing is working. But because I didn't try this specific thing in this specific spot at this specific time, then it didn't work.
And I think that's kind of, that's where a walkthrough can be very, very helpful.
Yes.
And I don't want to turn this conversation about walkthroughs, but very good. Okay, cool. Deku Tree. How'd you feel about Goma?
Goma.
Our boss at the end.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say the names. It
was the spider with the big eye and it would crawl on the ceiling and stuff.
Yes. Yep. No, I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a really fun boss level. I feel like a lot of the bosses in this game were very fun.
I felt so too.
And I really enjoy, this is one thing about old Zelda games I do enjoy. Normally each dungeon you get a new item and the boss, you have to use that item to defeat. And I think that flows so perfectly. And I really love that.
Yes. Usually in a classic 3D Zelda game, you use everything you've gotten up to that point to get through the first half of the dungeon. Mm-hmm. There's a mid boss or a mid something. Usually it's a mid boss. Sometimes it's a mid puzzle. A mid boss that gives you a new item. You use the second half of the dungeon getting used to that item, and then you're tested on that item with the boss.
I love it. I feel like it's such a tried and true formula.
Yeah.
And it feels so smooth and it feels so good every time you get to that final boss and you finally get to whip out your new item and just wail on them.
Speaking of context clues, one thing that was really cool about this boss battle is that in the very beginning, you're walking around and you're just hearing the walking around. You don't really know what's going on. Also, this is one of the first times in a Nintendo 64 game where there was dynamic lighting. Maybe you noticed, maybe you just felt it. But when Link goes into any of the boss battles, the lighting goes from a very certain direction. The colors change and it's all very dramatic. When you finally look up, when you finally go into your first person view and look up and see Goma up there, you've taught yourself that you might have to look up to find enemies. Up to that point, there wasn't too much up and down. And then you start learning, I can use my arrows and look up and shoot Goma down and have it fall down. And so they give you some of those context clues right off the bat, which is very cool.
Yeah, no, I think
I said arrows, but I think it's not arrows at that point. It's the slingshot. I misspoke.
Yeah,
but it's basically
it's the same. Which I was going to say earlier, I do really enjoy that you have different items depending on if you're young Link or older Link, because you can use different things. You're too small, you're too big, or whatever, which is really cool. I really enjoyed that.
How'd you feel about Dodongo Cavern, the second one?
I loved it. Yeah. Because it's one of those things too. With the Dongos, you play against them time and time again in the games. So as soon as you get there, you're like, I know how to deal with these guys. And then you can just go and have a blast.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I liked that the Dodongo Cavern actually had a kind of scary music for a Zelda game. It was the first time we were starting to get a little scary in the game. And I loved the Dodongo skull, figuring out all the different puzzles.
It was the first time the Dodongos really looked that way, too. Because normally they're like the big blobby boys. You know what I'm talking about? In
release order, there was a Dodongo as a boss of like the third level in the first Zelda game. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only time. I think there's a Dodongo.
Was Link's Awakening not out yet?
Oh, there's Dodongos in Link's Awakening. Yeah. You're right. No, it came before that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. They were kind of like, they looked like big Triceratopses or something like that a little bit.
Well, in this one, yeah. But in those ones, they had like the big circle, like things.
What?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
They look like a Triceratops in the Nintendo game.
Wait. Okay.
Pulling it up. Let's do it. But this kind of like lizard Triceratops without the horns look was definitely.
Yeah, they look like this.
That's not a Dodongo.
Yeah. It's a Dodongo snake, and even in the classic ones.
Okay. That is maybe technically a different animal because it's called Dodongo snake.
Wait, I don't know. That's like when I hear Dodongo, I think of those guys.
Cool.
Those like big circly boys.
That's probably how you got introduced to them, right?
Well, yeah, that's how I was introduced to them. So then when I got
never
to
knew
see
that
them,
those were called Dodongo snakes.
Really?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, you defeat them the same way of having them eat the bombs
Absolutely.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So when I saw them in Ocarina and then Majora's, I was like, this is a cool new design for them.
Cool new design.
I was like, oh, they look like actual things now.
The Ocarina of Time Dodongos, they absolutely reference the very first Legend of Zelda way a Dodongo looks. One thing that's kind of fun, it took me a while to really realize that they don't have back legs. I mean, the big Dodongo does, but the little guys, they just have little legs.
They just slither around.
Yeah.
They're really like scary, though.
I think they are.
They do a lot of damage.
They take a while. Once you get the pattern down of like hit the tail and run around the medium-sized ones, but I remember going into some of those areas, some of those rooms, those cavernous rooms, and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's 3 more. What am I going to do? You know, the first time you play. King Dodongo, Giant Dodongo, whatever it's called, the boss of the Dodongo Cavern, has a nice, scary opening intro.
He does. That's what I'm saying. The music in this game is incredible. It's very well suited to every situation and every moment that you're in. We
get a first-person shot from the monster walking towards Link, which is like classic horror movie rules, actually. Link turns around and the thing screams at him. One of my favorite things about all of the bosses in Ocarina of Time, and maybe this will just be a continuing theme as we speak about them, is that when you are first introduced to them, you absolutely have a few seconds of panic where you're like, I can't.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't. What am I going to do? And then
they just throw you straight in.
They throw you straight in and you slowly start figuring out. It's a puzzle. A good Zelda boss is a puzzle, which is what I think awesome. And you slowly start to learn, he inhaled a bomb or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe you kind of know that from the first Zelda game. But, he runs around and rolls. Okay, I can kind of go here. And once you get the patterns down, you can take care of these bosses. But in the beginning, the first time playing, even the dragon in the fire temple later on, you're just like, how? No, what? There's no way. And then you slowly figure it out, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah, and I will say as far as me with my walkthroughs, normally I will try and beat the boss first by myself. And then if I'm like doing nothing to it and I'm like, I feel like I've tried everything, then I'll look. So it is one of those things. I do very much enjoy that puzzle part of the Zelda games, because when it comes to the boss, it's like, I know I need to use this new item, but how do I need to use it? And kind of deducing that and figuring it out.
Yeah, for sure. When a Zelda game's at its worst is when they project what you're supposed to do a little too much. Like there's some huge eye on something, or like there's some huge, but that's okay. That's okay. One of the fun things about the first time I did the giant Dodongo fight was I genuinely was terrified. I genuinely took a few seconds to figure out what to even do. There's some graphic clues, like when he inhales, you can kind of see there's like wind going into his mouth, and you can slowly put some stuff together. But that's a blast. Let's move on to Jabu Jabu.
Jabu Jabu. Oh, Jabu
Zora's
Jabu.
Domain, Jabu Jabu, the Jabu Jabu fish.
Yes.
And of course, then you've obviously also experienced Jabu Jabu and Echoes of Wisdom, which is a ton of fun.
Yes. And that was exciting for me. Which we have to talk about Ruta.
Sure.
The little Zora princess.
I guess we skipped her in the characters part.
Yeah. She is such a brat and I love her.
Okay.
She is so funny. But I love the Jabu Jabu fight. I love the whole dungeon is really fun, running around with like, I think it's electric, the guys that can like hit you. A little annoying, but it's also kind of fun where you have to carry her through it and she gets mad at you when you throw her and put her down.
Yes. Yeah.
it's like a really fun mission, and it's one of those moments where it really feels like a kid Link interacting with another kid.
I agree. And when you start to realize, I have, not only am I helping her out, but I can frankly use her as a tool by putting her on certain buttons and things like that, then the puzzle mechanic comes in even more, and it's cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool moment where I'm in a room and there's nothing, it's just 2 buttons. I'm like, what am I supposed to work with here? And then I put her down. I'm like, wait a minute, you got body weight.
Exactly. Or I think there's one puzzle where if you hold her, you both weigh enough to push one of the hard buttons down. That's kind of cool.
That was a really cool moment. Something about the physics of that when they're starting to think of the physics in the games is really cool.
Ocarina of Time did not use a physics engine, but they did try to emulate some physics like this.
Yeah, they emulated it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Wind Waker was one of the first times they actually had proper physics engines running.
Ooh,
and so you might notice.
The wind.
Yeah, like the wind. Yeah, the wind was part of it.
Yeah.
But like as you continue to play Wind Waker, you'll see the particles in the air from the lava or vines hanging from the trees. Those are all technically running little physics algorithms. It's
cool.
not a full physics engine the way Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at their core, the engine of the game has a physics engine running. In Wind Waker, they just kind of insert little parts at certain rooms will load up that stuff. But anyways, this one here, a little bit of that too. The boss in this one is just the big spinny infection thing where you learn how to use your boomerang. It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's a
run
decent
around,
boss.
a little scary.
Yeah, that one was a little bit scary.
That technically takes us to the Forest Temple, but there is the kind of jump in time after that. You bring the 3 stones back. Okay, Link goes in.
Yeah, you do. Sorry, I'm like going through a thing to like remind myself. Technically, you do Phantom Ganon next, don't you?
Well, Phantom Ganon's in the forest. That's the boss.
Oh, that is the Forest Temple. Okay. Yeah, his was cool too, going through the paintings.
Coming out of the paintings, yes.
I remember specifically the first time I had ever seen that was at one of the Zelda Dungeon Marathons when they were playing.
Okay.
And so I saw that and I was like, this is cool.
The fact that they were able to kind of have the perspective of the 3D model line up with the image of the actual paint, that the developers were able to line it up so it actually looks like he's actually
and like you get to go into that first person and like look around and try and figure out what's going on.
Absolutely.
Same thing with it was really cool, just completely incorporating the paintings to remind me. Is it Mario N64 that they go into the painting Super Nintendo world?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of that, where a lot of it was painting based, and even with to unlock all the areas with the different the pose, the little spirits, you had to like go and like shoot them in the specific paintings, but if they caught you or like saw you, then they would like disappear. You'd have to leave and come back.
A little bit of stealth in a Zelda game, a little bit of stealth.
It was a cool dungeon.
It's funny that you should mention the Mario connection, because when The Legend of Zelda 64 was originally, or Ocarina of Time, was originally being developed, the original concept is that the entire adventure would happen from Ganondorf's castle.
Really?
And that you'd go into paintings to go to the other worlds. But then they decided, oh gosh, this is maybe too similar to Super Mario 64. But originally they also thought that they didn't think that they were going to be able to make a Hyrule Field. They thought they didn't have enough memory in the cartridge. And even as it is, Hyrule Field, if you really think about it, is kind of sparse. It's really stretched out.
Yeah.
But they figured out a way. And so then they weren't going to use the Ganondorf's castle idea anymore. It's kind of represented again at the end there.
Yeah.
But the models that they had used for this hub world became the Forest Temple.
Really?
So the geometry of going up and down the stairs and the pictures, the ghosts in the pictures, and then the final battle, and that the literal going up the stairs into with the rope around the thing was originally built to be part of the hub world. And then they repurposed it as the Forest Temple, which is super cool. I also think the Forest Temple is one of the most well-realized environmental dungeons.
It's really good.
The moss hanging down everywhere. You know what I mean? Vines hanging everywhere. Like you really feel like you're in a lived-in area. You don't feel like you're just necessarily moving through squares and rectangles.
I will also say, with me constantly being like, I recognize this from Breath of the Wild or Tears. The Phantom Ganon outfit you can get in Tears. I never knew what that was until I went to Zelda Dungeon Marathon stream, saw that, and I got talking with one of the guys there, being like, I had no clue that this was from something.
Yep.
So that was a really cool moment too.
It was the first time we really had a Phantom Ganon, to my understanding. Phantom Ganon would come up later. Obviously, there's a Phantom Ganon in Wind Waker and all that kind of stuff. All right, let's move on. Fire Dungeon. This is the one that I will forever have nightmares about, just because it took me 1 month to get through because I kept restarting. You'll
probably remember it way better than I do.
Well, it's the one where you're saving all the Gorons.
Yeah.
You might remember.
I do remember the dungeon very well.
Yeah.
Saving all the Gorons is fun, and they all give you like a little tidbit or like a little piece of advice, which is fun. Just getting to sneak around. And also they have the little maybe I'm making this up. Don't they have like the little guys that pop up out of the ground?
The little guys that pop up out of the ground.
That help you? Am I making that up? They're like little badger looking people?
Well, that's Skyward Sword only.
Okay, so it is Skyward Sword's one. Okay.
Dungeon, Fire Temple area.
Yeah.
You might this happens to me sometimes. You might be playing too many Zelda games at once, and then sometimes I accidentally conflate memories of one game into another. I was going to
say, I couldn't remember, because that is also one where they help you getting Gorons. So
yeah, and I felt like Skyward Sword was referencing Ocarina a little bit when they did that. This dungeon for me does have some really fun, proper geometry puzzles, proper mazes. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's the firewall mazes. How were you with running around the tower to get the was it the arrows in that one? No, it's the hammer.
Yeah.
How did you do in that room, the hammer room?
I think I did good.
It's the one where you run up on a spiral and it's very, very difficult. You have to do the narrow part. And if you miss, you fall all the way down to the main room.
I did fantastic on those.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to hear that.
I did so good on that one. I thought that was a breeze.
Cool.
Yeah, I really liked the Fire Temple. Pardon my one memory conflict, but I do remember I really enjoyed it. I loved all the different levels and kind of figuring out, okay, this clearly shows like a trapdoor above me. So at one point I'm going to have to come up there, do something and come back down. And this, I can't go up the stairs here yet, but if I go up around, then I can pull this out of the way. I really liked it.
100%. I was about to say a similar thing, that this was one of the first dungeons, in my opinion, Forest Temple had a little bit of verticality, but this one really had you thinking about the different, I think there's like 5 floors in this dungeon.
It's crazy.
And the fact that you smash a pyre to fall down to the first floor to do a thing so you can go another area. Tons of fun.
I love it. I loved it so much. The Fire Temple, I feel like the Fire Temple in almost every Zelda game, if not every Zelda game that I've played, has always been really solid and really fun to play for me.
That's cool. How did you feel about the dragon battle at the end?
The dragon battle was fun.
I thought it was neat.
Challenging.
Yeah, a little bit of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, a little bit of whack-a-mole, which I am a huge fan of. I like just getting to hit dragons over the top of the head. That
was another one where in the intro cutscene, when the dragon comes out and flies around, I 100% was like, there's no way. There's no way to fight this thing.
Because at the point in time, obviously you know in the back of your head you're going to use this hammer. Yeah. But when you see it come out, you're like, okay, I have arrows. Like, what am I going to do against this thing?
Yeah. And it is, I remember once he started popping up out of the holes, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. A lot less scary now,
But that first minute, you're like, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. Just leave.
Totally true. Well, let's move on to the Water Temple.
Uh-huh.
I was someone who, I wouldn't say that I loved the Water Temple the first time I played it, but I never had a problem with it. I kind of I love water puzzles. Yeah. I love the whole raise water up so you can go somewhere, raise it down. Super Mario 64 had a puzzle like that, level like that. I think that's just a really fun way to navigate 3D space. It really gets you thinking vertically. And I just realized maybe all the vertical puzzles in the Fire Temple are, maybe that's by design, that you're kind of ramping up your contextual awareness of a dungeon is getting more and more needed as you go through these dungeons. They're getting more difficult in that way. The water dungeon, famously designed by Eiji Aonuma, the now head of the Zelda games. Yep. He did a couple of the dungeons in Ocarina of Time. He was a co-producer, and then he got Majora's Mask as the main director. That was his first proper Zelda game.
Awesome.
But in the beginning, for Ocarina of Time, he was set up for dungeon design, and he probably obviously with a team, but he did the Water Temple. So he's really known for these puzzle box dungeons. A puzzle box dungeon is the idea where the entire dungeon
is a puzzle.
You got to remember what's in this room to change the thing in that room, to move that thing around. Fire Temple has a little bit of that with the knocking the piers down and stuff like that. There was a level or two in Link's Awakening, Eiji Aonuma had nothing to do with it, that I felt were kind of puzzle box type dungeons. Yeah. So I know that everybody talks about water temples being the hardest, and I think they can be and are. I remember the first time I played it, sometimes you just keep looping through the dungeon until you find the thing you need to find. And that's a lot of maybe wasted time. There was a couple differences with this one. I mean, it's famous at this point, but in the original Nintendo 64 version, to put your boots on and off, you had to go into your pause menu and unequip them and then go back out. So anytime you wanted to go up or down, you had to go pause, turn the boots on, turn the boots off, go back in. And very smartly, this version just maps them to a button, essentially. I think they are an item, essentially.
Yeah, they operate exactly like an item.
I love the meme where it's like, Link wears iron boots, sinks to the bottom. Link takes them off and puts them in his pocket and can race to the top.
That is very funny.
And also there was a lot more graphical cues in this water temple. I noticed that there was colored paintings on the walls to kind of help you see the circuitry of where the different switches were and what water level they would take you to.
See, you're smarter than me.
Well, none of that was in the first one. It was just
really?
blue walls everywhere. And you just kind of had to remember the tunnels.
That's cool.
The first time in the Nintendo 64 version, rather.
Yeah. I didn't have an issue with this water temple, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Because I will say it was the hardest one for me.
Yeah.
Still. The complexity of the fire temple is about where my brain stops working. But I didn't have too much of an issue figuring things out. I had to refer to the walkthrough a couple times when I'm like, I'm missing a key, but where am I missing it from type thing.
And there's that super fun one where you actually have to get it while you're half sinking down.
Yeah.
There's that middle spot, which is cool.
One of those things. Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, I have everything except this one thing. I have to backtrack and figure out which one I'm missing because I can't remember which ones I got.
Yeah.
But the amoeba, the boss fight with the amoeba, which you claim was so easy compared to the original version, way nicer. That thing, I have a vendetta against.
The amoeba didn't was it just because the hook shot kind of trails behind, or what was it?
I was having a lot of issues grabbing it with the hook shot, and I kept grabbing it, and then it would I don't know if it would glitch or it wouldn't come all the way and it would fall right back into the water.
If it hits the side wall, it does fall back into the water.
Yeah, I kept struggling with that over and over. And it took me so long to beat this thing. And when it was done, I got to the point where I wasn't even like, yippee, I won. I was just like, finally. Thank God this is over. Nothing against IG Numa, if you're listening, I love you very much. You did a great job. I'm just not the greatest with these kind of things. Water levels always give me a little bit of issue with the bosses.
I think and hope that you'll enjoy the water temple in Twilight Princess. It's a nice mix of the two, where there's some water going up and down, but there's also, you're not just always trying to float through some kind of liminal 3D space. The things are informed and it's kind of cool. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a little more like waterfall-y. It's more like, move the waterfalls to do different things in Twilight Princess, which is a lot of fun. But this one was cool. And I have no idea if IG Numa actually did the boss design, come to think of it. There could be entire teams that just do the boss designs.
Yeah. But the dungeon itself, very solid. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to do Shadow Temple?
Yes.
We're skipping some of the little tiny temples. I just looked at my notes. We're skipping the ice cavern. We're skipping the bottom of the well. There are other little moments, but we have gone a little long in this episode. So
yeah, but I want to talk about Bongo Bongo.
Spirit Temple. Let's do it.
Spirit Temple was
Wait, is it Spirit or Shadow?
Shadow.
Shadow. Let's do Shadow Temple.
Shadow Temple was my favorite temple.
By the way, allegedly, I don't think I've ever done this, but allegedly you can play the Spirit Temple or the Shadow Temple in either order.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people go to Shadow next because the story kind of leads you there.
Yeah.
But I think there's nothing stopping you to go to Spirit. But anyway.
That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, Shadow Temple, by far my favorite. I think it was very creepy. The vibes were all really good. I like the constant dropping. Like if you do something or go the wrong place, you can drop down to that read-in area. Yeah. I like the creepiness of it. And then especially the final boss with Bongo Bongo. He was my favorite boss. He wasn't hard, but he was fun. This
was the origin of the kind of big hands boss that starts happening in the Zelda games. It's the first time we got one of those. A lot of people feel that tonally Bongo Bongo didn't really match the aesthetic of the dungeon, but I don't know. He's a trapped spirit. And one thing is cool.
I would disagree.
Well, please, I'd love to talk about it. I did want to say one thing that I think is neat is that in the music, and some of our listeners have pointed this out in the past, you can hear the drums come in and out sometimes, which is neat.
No, I see where I would disagree with that is, and this might just be me not speaking truth and just referring to Demon Slayer, the anime. But if what I've seen in this anime is correct in Japanese folklore, a lot of spirits are tied to drums and tied to this kind of music and changing in these liminal spaces. And so seeing Bongo Bongo, my mind instantly just clicked of this is a big Japanese folklore spirit playing his little drums, messing me up.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know. For me, tonally, I feel like it fit in very well with everything else in the dungeon. I
love the hover boot thing. I thought it was cool.
Very fun.
I thought that it was really well balanced in that cool, you can walk further, but while you're walking, you're kind of walking with ice mechanics. It's slippery, which was a really nice balance of the thing. It's not just like a magic wand of a bridge that brings you somewhere. You still have to have some kind control.
Of technical,
technical ability. And then, of course, how it helps you when the drums are bouncing is really, really fun and neat.
No, I could talk about Shadow Dungeon. I love that thing, especially with the lens of truth that you get.
Yes.
Being able to see all these different things that aren't there, which even the dungeon to get the lens of truth was really fun. I don't know, everything about that I just really
bottom
enjoyed.
of the well, basically.
I think so.
I'm checking my notes here. Yeah.
And that was another one where you could like fall through if you weren't like looking carefully enough or get grabbed by things.
That's right.
Yeah, I love when Zelda gets to like delve into the creepy side.
I am accidentally mixing this one with Spirit. Which one is the one that has like, frankly, like the torture machines and stuff? Is that the Spirit Temple?
What do you refer to as the torture machines?
Like the big spinning blades and stuff? No, that was this one.
Yeah, I think that was this
because
one.
you have to use the lens of truth to see where they are sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, this one was insanely well built.
Well, also, maybe, I guess maybe some of it was changed. I have to go back and do like a shot for shot. But I remember in the 64 version, there was like literal blood on the ground and stuff like that. There was stockades where you could see like torture devices where people were.
See, I think they might have changed it because I don't remember that.
Maybe they pulled some of that down.
I wish they kept it because I love that tonal darkness.
I'll do a little more research. As I was playing, I was kind of thinking, okay, yeah, this is the thing. But where that comes to from a lore point of view, it's a little dark, and I don't know if it's fan fiction or fan theories or actual lore, but I think it's been kind of confirmed is that this is where previously the reason the Sheikah have such a difficult time with Hylians is because a little bit with the Breath of the Wild storyline, as the Sheikah became more powerful, the Hylians admired them but also feared them.
Yeah.
And so this is where the Hylians would torture the Sheikah. And that's why the Sheikah split into their own society. And if you take the Breath of the Wild storyline, that's why some of the Sheikah get really, really mad and become Yiga.
That is fascinating.
So the Hylians in general, like, it's a little bit dark, but if you go into the Hylian history for Ocarina of Time, it's thought that this was a place where, not good acts were performed on the Sheikah.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying about what I love about this game is them actually talking about like foreign policies, but like actual like politics between the kingdoms. And Hylia is a kingdom. Like they aren't always good. And I feel like Breath didn't fully touch on that. It was like under the surface of you're like, why is this one kingdom ruling over all of them?
Yeah, there weren't other kings. I mean, there's kind of the King Zora, but even that's
there was
like
chiefs.
The Zoras are famously always kind of off doing their own thing. And by the way, I said that Zoras were an invention for Ocarina of Time. Technically, the Sea Zoras were, but there's River Zoras in the Super Nintendo game, and there's technically River Zoras in the very first Zelda. But there is like a Zora's River in the Super Nintendo game, and so in some ways, going up Zora's River in Ocarina was like a kind of a callback to that.
I will say, going up the Zora's River in Ocarina was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a full-on adventure. It's so cool. You're kind of figuring out water, if you can walk through different water depths. And then when you go back as an adult and some of the stuff that was like thick water that would sweep you away is just up to your ankles and it's no problem at all.
Yeah. That
was all cool. All right, so let's do our final dungeon. How did you do getting through the desert?
Getting through the desert.
Yeah, because this is all the Gerudo stuff, right?
Oh, yes. Thank you. So getting through the desert.
Lens of Truth.
I'm sorry?
You use the Lens of Truth, don't you?
Think so. My brain is so scrambled about this part.
So I often blur these two dungeons together, and like I just played them, but
I'm like trying to think about this dungeon. I'm going to be so real with you. I remember Twin Rova. I really enjoyed them. They're my favorite song probably in all the Zelda games.
The one standout is I really enjoyed that there was portions of the dungeon where you actually go outside of the statue and you go on from hand to hand, jump from hand to hand, and all that. Just bringing some of it back.
This is bringing it back.
And you're helping. There's the one Gerudo that she needs your help getting through the dungeon. This is the one where you actually have to go back as a kid and come back and forth. And I know why I'm having a hard time right now. I did not play them in this order. I did the Gerudo dungeon before the Shadow dungeon.
No kidding.
When I played, even just most recently. I think I've always played it that way. So I was looking at my notes and I was trying to go with the flow here. And I was trying to be like, yeah, cool, that's the next one. But I was like, I don't know if that's the next one. That's why I got confused about Lens of Truth. I always play Spirit Temple first and then I do Shadow last.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, go through Shadow, help the Gerudo.
I mean, there's not much to say about it, right? Like, you go through, you get the little mirror shield thing, which is kind of cool, and it is really fun in the boss fight with the Twin Rova.
First time they're kind of doing, like, light. Oh, no, maybe there was some light in the Super Nintendo game. But anyway, let's keep going. Yeah,
being able to, like, kind of reflect their own elements back at the other one to, like, kind of fight. You got the epic theme for them. I cannot express enough how much I love it and how excited I was to hear it again in Majora's. But yeah.
How do you feel about Katake and Kome being Ganondorf's mothers?
I love that. I was just about to bring that up. It's such a fascinating, like, thing to think about of, like, is he adopted? Was he spawned somehow? Was he made with magic? And that's why he is the way he is? It's like, but it's also one of the things of, it's very clear that they care very deeply for him. And there is that love there. So it's kind of this weird twisted thing going on of, like, they're trying to protect their kid and also trying to make him the ruler, but that's not good. And then you get this big fight with the two sisters, and it's fun. It's really fun.
I remember when we did our first Ocarina of Time episode, Kate, my co-host from back then, pointed out that it was a little weird that the witches, when they die, they have halos, and it's implied they go to heaven.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I don't actually think, I think that iconography does imply that. I don't think that's what Nintendo was thinking about. I think Nintendo was just thinking, like, yeah, this is the symbol for death ghosts. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because you don't want to, like, animate them going down. That's a little dark.
Sure, yeah.
But I can subscribe to that theory of them going to the great beyond, whatever the Hylians believe, the goddesses beyond, because you know what? They were just trying to do what they thought was best for their son. And they were trying to protect him.
Well, speaking of their son, let's talk about, having the Rainbow Bridge be complete and going to Ganon's castle. Yeah,
so Ganon's castle was really cool. I love all the different sage rooms you have to go through.
Yes, okay.
That was so fun and so cool.
Wow, cool. I did not love that part.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like Ganon's castle kind of starts weak and then picks up. But let's talk about all the different rooms. Let's do it.
Yeah, there was something about the fact that, you go in the circle, and it kind of implies to you that you want to do, like, the shadow and stuff kind of last, because you kind of go in the order that you played them in almost.
You kind of go left to right, yeah.
And each one, it was like you're going against the enemies and in the kind of geography of where you were. They all feel like their own little self-contained mini dungeons.
And they do remind you of the mechanics you used in those dungeons. You have to use them again and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's like a really good final review or refresher before going against Ganon. But yeah, there was just something about being able to go back and replay through because I chose, like, the best parts of those dungeons to put in them. So getting to do, like, a last hurrah of, like, oh yeah, this was all that I've done so far.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the wind mechanic too with the hover boots is cool, which it was definitely in the little room for in this castle, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So then we're starting to go up. We fight some dark knots or dreadnoughts, dark knots. We get to the staircase. Mm-hmm. I don't know, thoughts, feelings.
I was excited and nervous because I didn't know how hard the battle was going to be. Then I went up and I was like, oh, this was easy. And then he dies and I'm like, that was it. Did you know that
Ganon was coming?
I didn't know he was coming back.
You really didn't. That's awesome.
I beat it. I was like, oh.
Maybe that's just what games were like back then.
I was like, that's kind of anticlimactic. Maybe that's just how it was. I don't know. You get Zelda. I was like, okay, let's finish the game. And then he comes back and I was like, I knew there had to be something more. That was way too anticlimactic of an ending. And then you do the second fight and it's way harder.
Yes.
And way more intense. And then you finally beat him. And I'm like, now I am satisfied.
I love the castle falling apart, Zelda helping you through the doors going down. Maybe that's when you actually fight the dreadnoughts. But anyway, it was the first time in a video game for me where there was kind of like an action set piece where things were being triggered as you ran.
Yeah.
And you kind of did feel like they put the timer in there. If you really just keep moving, it's very easy to get down in like 3 minutes or whatever it is.
So stressful, though.
It did. I know. It's great. It's so much fun.
It's really cool.
And then you get down and the whole castle falls. Everything's done. And then we get the famous shot. At this point, it's the famous shot from this game when Pig Ganon, and he's technically Pig Ganon if you look closely, does his like double axe, arms out kind of pose, and you don't even see him. He's in silhouette. The lightning flashes behind him, and it just says, and it just says Ganon.
That was like the epic moment for me. I just got chills. The epic moment for me of like going against Ganondorf, but this is Ganon. Mm-hmm. This is the spirit that has been haunting you through the games, and that's why he's in this like original pig form. He's in all this It's so good.
I think he has 4 legs. I think he's a little bit of
like he becomes a monster.
Yeah.
Man.
Another one of those where I was kind of like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. In the beginning, there's a lot of just running around and trying to get away from those big blades. And you kind of say, maybe I can get around behind him. And you start slowly figuring it out. But oh my gosh, and his
I was
eyes
just
glowing.
throwing everything at him. I'm like, nothing is working. I don't know what to do. I'm panicking because he's got such a long range and does so much damage. And you're trying to dodge and trying to like learn his moveset. But then, as in most Zelda games, once you get them down to a certain amount of health, then they switch to phase 2 and phase 3 and whatnot. So then you have to completely relearn and figure out what you're doing. It was so fun.
Mm-hmm. We also have Zelda helping out a little bit with the light arrow. This is the first time that kind of happens.
Yes.
I think you're going to very much enjoy how Zelda helps with the light arrow in Wind Waker when you get to that point.
Oh, I'm so excited.
She helps in a different way, slightly different way. Yeah, and then and there it is. There's the game, and then of course the ending. We go back in time and all the rest. There is not a Link, thank you for saving me, the Princess Zelda.
Because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
She doesn't even know what happened.
Well, as a kid, but even as the adults, I kind of went back. Oh, one thing that's a little weird that I think Celeste and I pointed out a few years ago is that the cutscene at the end is a little loosey-goosey with the lore. Like the Kokiri are outside of the forest as part of the celebration.
Yes.
There's a few things that are... I think there's one thing that implies that really shows you that all the Guardians probably are dead because they're like up on a hill looking down.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. I was just so excited to see all the characters together and celebrating that. As a kid, certainly, I didn't even consider all of those lore implications. I
was going to say, what I saw, I was just like, oh, having a great time. They're all alive. But yeah, now that you bring it up, but I think that also might go towards what we were thinking with the Saria saying goodbye to Link when he leaves. Maybe they can leave. And maybe they don't because of like growing up and the Deku Tree is like, don't do it, like it's against the rules type thing.
Maybe they grow if they leave.
Yeah, if they leave.
They stay. It's Peter Pan. It is Neverland, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Neverland. If they leave, but if they come out for the celebration, go back. They're still kids. But it's that moment for Saria where she knows what's gonna happen. She's like.
Well, another little fun fact about lore is if you follow the manga of Ocarina of Time, if any, and I think actually this is true in the game, if I'll say a Hylian or a humanoid or a human goes into the forest, they actually die. They actually can't survive in the forest. And there's a few references of that in the Lost Woods where the sad guy with the sad man that you see for a while, he ends up passing away and he becomes a tree and stuff like that. So you die and become a tree. There's a whole nother storyline where Link's mom, this is all like part of the manga.
I need to read this.
Link's mom. Well, maybe we do. Honestly, we've never done this yet, but I have some here. I was going to say, there's Majora's Mask. There's Ocarina of Time right there. And the Twilight series. We should start doing like reviews of the books.
I would love that.
So Link's mom brings him, there's a battle. The dad goes off to battle. Link's mom brings him to the forest. She's fleeing. She doesn't know what to do. The Deku Tree says, it's fine. I'll put a spell on him. He won't die here. But the mom does, grows into a tree, and some feel that is Link's house.
I love that.
I don't think the manga explicitly says that the tree that becomes his tree house or whatever is his mom, but in the manga, which is lore adjacent, which is canon adjacent. It's kind of considered canon, but you know what I mean? Like
that's
Nintendo.
Every Zelda game.
well, there's all that too, yeah. But anyways, all the things. It has been now an hour for this half of this episode.
Oh my goodness, this is gonna be a long one.
It is impossible for this podcast to have an episode about Ocarina of Time that is not 2 hours long, is what I've realized. It's just absolutely impossible. Even our music episode was super long when we did it. Maybe we'll have to do another one. But anyways, just to keep things moving, because we are also, from a production point of view, recording our Echoes of Wisdom episode tonight, which will be our second episode of the season. I can't wait to talk about it. Any final takeaways or final thoughts about finally, let me phrase it this way. I'm kind of setting you up here. I understand. But like, hey, as someone who only saw Star Wars 7, 8, and 9, and now you've gone and you've seen Star Wars 4, you know what I mean? Like, what was it like for you to finally experience not even necessarily the best Zelda game? I think it's absolutely up there. Everyone has the right to think whatever Zelda games are good, bad, or otherwise, but certainly the one that really is the core of the franchise, the one that really set up a lot of the staples. What was that experience like for you?
Well, someone who still needs to watch Star Wars.
Oh my God!
I know. I knew that was going to kill you, so I had to put it in there.
You're like, episode 8, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm like, yes, I follow.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. I'm just
even though there's,
you know,
20 Zelda games out there, 25 Zelda games out there, depending on how you count the remakes and stuff. This is the one. This is the one that in many ways started it all, as far as like what a Zelda game is.
Yeah, I will say it has completely changed the way I not only play Zelda games, but how I play games as a whole now. In the sense of actually taking the time to appreciate all the small things, sitting down and reading all the dialogue, feeling the story, kind of putting myself into the game and taking good time with it, and learning to be more patient with not only with the game, but also with myself. And yeah, it just kind of gave me an overall new appreciation for Zelda games. Because after beating Ocarina is when I went to Majora's, Wind Waker, and Echoes. And all 3 of those games, I never had that initial issue getting into.
Yeah.
All of them, I jumped straight in. And I found myself when I was playing Wind Waker, sitting and slowly reading through all the dialogue and starting to really fall in love with the characters right from the get-go. And so, yeah, Ocarina has done a lot for me, I think.
I think that in another 10 years, Breath of the Wild will probably be kind of considered a quote-unquote Ocarina, in that it was the next time the franchise really took a step in a different, or really kind of redefined itself. And I feel that Breath of the Wild is a very special game for that reason. But Ocarina was the first time that happened for the franchise.
Oh, it's huge. And it was one of those things when we started at the beginning, I had no clue it was the 5th game.
I know.
Because it feels so good. It plays so well. It looks amazing. So for me to hear it's the 5th game in the series, I'm still thinking, okay, this might be a little clunky. This might not look the best. But it was incredible.
Maybe what we do towards the end of this season as one of our episodes is we have you, just hear me out. We have you with the Nintendo 64 controller, just at least play maybe the first 3 gems or something, or the first 3 Spirit Stones on NSO, with the quote unquote bad graphics, the original graphics, because you said it's still a beautiful game, and you're absolutely right. And I honestly think that that Grezzo did a phenomenal job, kind of redoing the graphics. By the way, the Grezzo's version of Majora's Mask is almost Twilight Princess level graphics. The Majora's Mask graphics are wonderful. All the like trees in the background. The Nintendo 64 version, it's more like a wall with trees painted on it. There's no actual trees. You know what I mean? Just as an experiment. I would love to. Not that I would want you to say, "Gosh, this is so ugly," but just to have even further your palette of what Ocarina of Time can be.
No, I would love to do that.
I think we do it. I think we throw you on a Nintendo 64. We don't make you play the whole game or anything. And I could even replay the first 3 stones again.
Okay.
And well, you know what? I just thought of something, and let's finish this episode up. I'm also working with a streamer. His name's Steve, and he has never played a Zelda game. And he and I have been having meetings for the past couple months. I don't even have his YouTube channel memorized right now, but we are going to have him play through Ocarina of Time, Nintendo 64 version. He's going to stream it as a AZP partner, and then I'm going to have him on the show to talk about it.
That's
what
cool.
if it's going to be towards the end of the season? He's going to be playing this for the next 5-6 months. What if we also have you on that episode and just have you at least play the first 3 dungeons?
I would love
we can figure this out 6 months from now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if the 3 of us could talk about it and have an informed conversation from 3 different points of view, I think that would be phenomenal.
No, I would love that.
Cool. Well, I'm so happy that you now have this in your brain, this game in your brain. I'm so happy that in a weird way you've been experiencing the references in reverse. That's actually kind of a really cool, weird, magical experience. Yeah, cool. I certainly enjoyed playing it again. I enjoyed it in 3D. I did. It was kind of fun to see all these areas that I had always experienced just on a television screen, kind of in 3D. It was super fun to see a spiritual stone pop up on the screen and kind of feel like it was actually sticking out, and I could almost touch it. I was in. I did like it. I was less inspired by the button layout, but probably because I'm just so in love with the 64 button layout, because that's what I've been playing for the past 20 years. But I do think that Grezzo made the right choices and interesting choices bringing it to the 3DS.
Absolutely. I agree.
Cool. Well, there it is. Kady, let's wrap this up. And you're hosting the next one. You're hosting Echoes.
Yes.
And you've played the whole game.
I played it. I got it the day it came out, and I played it within a week.
Within a week. I am 3 dungeons in. So I've done.
Okay. I will not spoil anything.
You know, and we can talk about this on the episode. I'm cool if we talk about some things, but I'm basically, I think I'm through like the first act. I'll save it for the episode.
Okay, cool.
Let's get out of here. Kady, have a great couple weeks. I'll see you in a few seconds.
Yeah, I'll see you.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. You can find Another Zelda Podcast on X and Instagram and Facebook and all the things just by searching Another Zelda Podcast. We're Another Zelda Pod on X. We're Another Zelda Podcast on Instagram. We don't yet have a TikTok, but I think I'm going to build one.
These days.
And I'm going to start putting video content out on that, as well as doing our Instagram Reels and the YouTube Shorts and all that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to take little excerpts from our episodes and share them in that way. Also, if you really the easiest thing to do is just go to anotherzeldapodcast.com, where you can find links to all the services where the show comes out, and also read a couple blog articles we've got up there, and just see the other 6 seasons of this show. This show started at the end of 2017 is when this show started, Kady.
Wow.
And now we're kind of in our third wave right now here with you as this staple of a co-host. I'm really looking forward to season 7. I can't wait. And thanks for being here.
Where can they find you, though, David?
Oh, you can find me on Insta, all the things. I'm Raptor Paint. I'm just Raptor Paint on all the things.
There you go.
And if you're inclined, I also make another show called Returning Student. I've talked about it on this show in the past. You can find that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the places. And then this kind of weird artificial intelligence podcast that I'm doing called An Artificial Podcast. Even the name of the show is a bit of a joke because it's like, is it a podcast if one of the co-hosts is a computer program? And so I'm kind of deconstructing how podcasts work. I'm deconstructing how human nature works. I'm trying to deconstruct how computers might think. And we go in both directions. We talk about the pros and cons of AI, including the amount of energy that AI consumes from a global point of view. We actually have one episode that's literally titled Environment, and we talk about like what it's doing, what AI is doing from a physical point of view to the Earth. But anyway,
that's awesome.
An artificial podcast. I'm having a ton of fun making it. We'll probably do a second season, but there it is. Kady, where can people find you on the internet?
I don't got much. You can find me on Instagram at Mind of Kady, Kady, or my website, kadyroberts.com. When can they listen to the show that you're working on as a producer for iHeart? Oh my God, yeah. If you're not in the Chicago area and can't tune in, you can download the iHeart Radio app. I'm working for Rock 95.5 FM. Like it sounds, they play rock music, and they play from 6 to 10 Chicago time. It's the Angie Taylor morning show, and it's a blast. I highly recommend you tune in.
Yeah, it sounds like a good driving to work kind of show.
Yeah, it's so funny. Everyone on it is amazing.
I will look forward to checking it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Kady. See you in the next episode.
See ya.